Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Alongside Ezra Ginsburg, alongside Dave Minuk, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Comprehensive Winnipeg Jets discussion and analysis for you on this Saturday morning. Nice to see you, gentlemen. Dave, nice to see the fire is still going hot behind you. Ezzy, nice to see that you're still an ungroomed beast.
Yeah, nice to see you, Drew, as well. Nice to see you, Dave. Hopefully you had a nice little anniversary on Thursday night with your wife, Laura. We had a great post-game show. Unfortunately, the Jets weren't able to pick up the win, but we soldiered on without you. So, yeah, we have a nice little game to talk about tonight, boys. And, heading into this one, there might be some more fireworks coming up between these two teams after what happened between Lowry and Galchenyuk and Thornton and Matty Perreault.
And Wayne Simmons and Pierre-Luc Dubois. Certainly was some heated comments yesterday. Certainly some heated action on the ice throughout the game on Thursday night, Mr. Minuk. Almost as hot as I'd say you are with that fire roaring behind you there, buddy.
Thank you, Drew. Good to have you back. I learned how difficult the hosting duties are in this new era. I generally do not host very often. Back in the day when we were on radio, every once in a blue moon, if you were gone, as you would usually host, but if both of you were gone, then I had the hosting responsibilities. A little different here. We still
it's not that hard. Drew makes it seem like it's so hard.
No, you know what? It's funny.
It's nothing.
But for the couple of things that we were supposed to, the 30-second thing, the ad sponsors, I found them after the show. So Ezzy and I, when we were doing our wrap-up show, which we constantly do,
yes,
after every post-game show,
that by the way, is not broadcast because nobody wants to watch that.
Too hot for TV.
That's right. It's like Jerry Springer, Too Hot for TV. If you remember back,
it's the real Illegal Curve.
But afterwards, I was like, I said to Ez, I'm like, oh, I wonder what this does, and then it played the 30-second commercial. I'm like, oh, I guess I should have used that during the broadcast. So we soldiered on, we got it done. But good to have you back. Good to have you back in your spot hosting, Drew.
And it is a pleasure to be back here. As I tweeted just a few minutes ago, I haven't been on for a week. And given the ridiculous schedule this season has been, and the games usually every second night, a week without broadcasting feels like about 6 months worth. So I'm excited to get into it this morning. I'm excited to get into it later on tonight with the post-game show. And then, of course, back to normal next week with the post-game shows. They play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the Jets do next week. So a lot of fun ahead for all of us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. And I must say good morning to everybody who's joining us in the chat. So nice to see so many of you, some new faces, some familiar faces. It's great to see all of you here this Saturday morning. And then, of course, later on tonight for the post-game show. But we get started with the Jets and the Leafs, of course, and what I think is finally developing into, I'm going to call it a little bit of a war of words between these two teams. It sort of started, obviously, with the ferocity, I just say, associated with Thursday night's game. A lot of questionable hits delivered by the Toronto Maple Leafs against some Winnipeg Jets players, some unsuspecting Winnipeg Jets players, certainly. And it spilled over into some of the comments yesterday with questions about, are the Leafs a dirty team? And then, Wayne Simmons firing back and saying, the Jets still are just trying to, the Jets have been trying to run the Leafs out of the building every time they play them. So finally, a little bit of hatred, I'd say, between these two teams after what a year, a year that I thought was going to have more hate because you only played the same teams over and over and over again. It's finally materialized with 10 games left to go in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that on Illegal Curve, we love to be fueled by hate. But yeah, I love this type of stuff, guys. And, I realize because of the circumstances of Thursday night's game and what happened, there's a lot of talk about, whether the Leafs are a dirty team or not. And, it makes you think back to the, 2012, 2013, 14 Leafs when they had Colton Orr and Fraser McLaren, the good old Randy Carlyle days, right, Dave? So, are the Leafs a dirty team? Like, maybe they have a few players that play on the edge. I don't necessarily think they're a dirty team, but you look at what happened in that game, and Dave and I talked about it on Thursday night's postgame show. I still don't understand how Alex Galchenyuk doesn't get a penalty on that play. And it's funny because Joe Thornton is the one that was fined, right? And that hit wasn't good. Don't get me wrong, guys. But I don't understand how, if Thornton is fine for that, like we've always talked about the NHL Department of Player Safety and the inconsistency and everything like that. And we don't have to get into that. But I thought at the very least, Galchenyuk was going to get a fine. Now, in terms of, what was happening, with Nick Foligno and Josh Morrissey, and then Pierre-Luc Dubois came in, it's pretty funny, guys, right? Because they were just teammates not too long ago in Columbus. And now Foligno and Dubois are, battling it out for top spot in the North Division, right? So, yeah, there's no doubt that, and Zach Hyman's obviously out of the lineup now, boys, but I mean, he's a guy that we know can mix it up, but nobody's going to call Hyman a dirty player. I mean, I've watched Hyman, just as much as you guys have. He's a guy that plays hard. He's not a dirty player. I mean, I wouldn't call any of these players. I mean, are you going to call Joe Thornton a dirty player? I mean, one of the best playmakers in NHL history. So is Wayne Simmons a guy that plays on the edge? Yes, but I don't care what anybody says. Wayne Simmons is not a dirty player.
No, there's a difference between, I mean, I don't even think that Wayne Simmons plays on the edge. Wayne Simmons is
he plays a physical game and he can drop the glove. That's what I meant by, kind of playing on the edge, Drew. Yeah.
No, a guy who plays on the edge and, who certainly could be, nobody would argue if you said he's dirty, is Tom Wilson. I look at this Leafs team, and
Tom Wilson is a dirty player.
Yeah, Brad Marchand, less so now that he's sort of begun to control himself, used to be a dirty player. I mean, he still has that bit of that in him, come playoff time and when things really get heated up. But from my perspective, the idea that the Leafs are a dirty team, I didn't quite understand where that was coming from. They beat up the Jets on Thursday night a little bit. And frankly, the Leafs needed to do that to the Jets for their own psyche, given the Jets had beaten up the Leafs pretty well this year on the scoreboard and in some physical instances during the game. But to me, the biggest concern, not the Leafs play, is the Jets' lack of a response, I thought, to some of the Leafs' physicality is what left me wondering about the team. I mean, at no point in time have I ever sat back and thought, Sheldon Keefe and the Toronto Maple Leafs, boy, they're playing a really dirty style. I didn't understand the impetus to the question. It's just a coincidence, I think, that the last time the Jets and the Leafs played, Hyman got that that high stick, which was not a good high stick. Obviously, that was a bad sort of hack down on Neil Pionk. But nobody thinks, to your point, Ezzy, that Zach Hyman's a dirty player or that Wayne Simmons is a dirty player. I mean, physical, maybe. Physical, yes. Not dirty. Dave?
Well, no, I mean, and I think you're asking the question, but I mean, the truth is that's just a narrative. And someone asked the question and they asked it in a manner that makes it sound like there's dirty players versus is this just a physical series that's ramping up after you've played each other 8 times? Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the narrative that makes a lot more sense to me, is that you have two teams that now, will this carry over if the NHL goes back to the regular thing? Then no, it won't, because again, guys change teams all the time. And if you're only playing the Leafs twice a year, then you're not going to have any sustainability to this. But for right now, you will. And at this point in the season, you're sick of, look, we talk about it all the time. And you've seen these teams, you've seen one team 8 times, you've seen another team 7 times. It's a lot, and playing these same teams over and over and over again, it gets a bit repetitive. So you start to develop that, that dislike, that disdain for each other. And again, like I said, I don't look at this team as a particularly dirty team. I mean, again, the Galchenyuk hit I thought was just, I just don't think he was paying attention.
Yeah, it was careless.
And the other thing also is that Adam Lowry was in a bit of a vulnerable position, right? Because he was not normally his upright self. He was kind of down, almost had height for Galchenyuk, but not for himself. And so the point is that, again, I just thought it was a physical game. And we've talked about this. The Jets team is not the 2017-18 Dustin Byfuglien, Ben Sherratt, Jacob Trouba. This isn't that team. They just don't have that physical brand of player to the same degree that they used to. And so you have to adapt. And again, you don't back down. You don't let these guys come in and impose their will. And I think what this has set itself up to be honest with you, is a bit of a game of a battle of attrition tonight. I think it set itself up for that, probably because of this. It's funny, right? Maybe the players weren't necessarily thinking it, but now you have these questions posed to them. They answer the questions. The questions get answered on the other side, obviously asked by the same guys, asked to these guys as well. The war word starts. They can, and again, we talk about this all the time. Guys can say they don't pay attention to what's going on, but guys pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
And guys turn on to TSN, they turn on Sportsnet. And what do you think is leading look, go to illegalcurve.com, read the morning papers. You can see and I'll read you some of the headlines. Like everyone, especially the video ones, are all about this whole idea of these are the headlines. Intensity levels on the rise between Jets and the Maple Leafs. Bad blood brewing between Maple Leafs Jets atop North Division. Are the Maple Leafs a dirty team? And then one about Sarah. Sarah Orlesky shares how Jets fans view the rivalry with the Leafs. So that's not necessarily so much about the intensity, but the point is that's the kind of the narrative that's been created since the last game, which again, to your point, was a physical one. So I think it'll just be interesting to see. I think it's almost going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy tonight, where that's what happens.
Well, because especially these two teams, this is the final. I mean, they have one more game, and that's on Friday, May the 14th. Mm-hmm. I'll be shocked if that game means anything, and if either of these two teams, are really playing for anything to speak of during that game. I think everything's going to be settled by then. So I think this is the last, what I'll call, opportunity tonight to make a statement. Both teams, and I think the Jets. I mean, clearly the Leafs are the best team in the North Division. And I bet you the Leafs, if you injected them with truth serum, would say the Jets are the second best team in the North Division. So I think these two teams are on a bit of a collision course if everything else, plays out to fruition to meet each other for the North Division championship when the playoffs begin. So I think that is also fueling the dislike, the physicality, and the desire to make a statement, be it for the Leafs making a statement on Thursday and now to see what the Jets' response will be when they play each other tonight. That leads us seamlessly, all this discussion, into our illegal curve question of the day. It's now ticking on the bottom of the screen for those of you joining us on our social media platforms. Want to hear from you on this topic. With all the discussion about the Leafs and whether or not they are a quote-unquote dirty team, are the Jets themselves tough enough, edgy enough for playoff hockey? Ezzy, I start with you with that question on this Saturday morning. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Yeah, and I understand it's a valid question. And by the way, I agree with Dave that at this point, it's just a narrative. And you make a good point, Drew. We're getting closer to the playoffs, right, guys? What are we, 3 weeks away from the playoffs? The Jets have 10 games left. Of course, these games are going to get a lot chippier. And I agree with Drew. I think, by the time we get down to, 3-4 games left in the season, maybe even 5 games, 6 games left in the season, I mean, these playoff spots might be solidified, right? You might have the Jets and the Oilers jockeying for position second and third, but it doesn't matter, as we know, because they're going to play each other second versus third, right? So I agree with you on that, Drew. But, this question is tough to quantify. How do you quantify that? Are you going to take all of the Jets players and kind of give them a toughness rating? You know what I mean, Drew? I agree with Dave. This Jets team is not you're not going to have Buff in the playoffs taking 2 guys by the shoulders and wringing their necks. So this is a much different team. Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor. I mean, these types of guys are not physical players. Do I think they're tough enough for the playoffs? By your definition of tough, not yours, Drew. I mean, by the
generally accepted,
the general unwritten rule of toughness. Yeah, of course I do. I don't look at this Jets team. And it's funny how we're only talking about this, 46 games into the season, right, Dave? This hasn't been a narrative at all. But you have, the Leafs going out there and throwing some body checks, not body checks, and some high hits, and then all of a sudden, the Jets aren't tough enough. But we could go up and down the roster, and obviously, Adam Lowry's doubtful for tonight, but Nate Thompson can handle himself. Logan Stanley can handle himself. Tucker Poolman can handle himself. And I'm not just talking about fighting. I'm talking about, physicality. Yeah. Matthew Perreault, we know he's a small player, but he can throw his weight around. He can get in on the forecheck and lay a good body check every once in a while. But yeah, I guess if you matched up the Jets' toughest players or the most physical players against, teams like Toronto, Montreal, Calgary. And, another point to make, boys, the next couple of games after this against the Oilers, you don't think those games are going to be hotly contested? You don't think we're going to see some physicality? I mean, we know a guy like Zach Cassian, Josh Archibald, Ethan Bear plays a physical game. They have guys, you don't think they're going to be mixing it up and trying to get under the Jets' skin? It's like Drew said, we're getting closer and closer to the playoffs, so the games start to get a little bit chippier. That's all that happens. They get tighter. There's less space. I don't put it this way, Drew. I don't worry about the Jets' lack of physicality at all, and whether that or not that's going to determine whether they win a playoff series or win 2 playoff series, because I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to goaltending. It's going to come down to special teams. It's going to come down to scoring depth. We know you have to have 4 scoring lines going, health, right, Dave? So, to me, it's not an issue.
Yeah, typically, as I would agree with you, or usually I would agree with you that the Jets didn't need to add any toughness or they didn't need to add any physicality. But, I'm just trying to think back to, this season. And I look at teams like Tampa Bay with what they did at the trade deadline last year. You can't put goons on the ice. You can't put, slugs on the ice who can't contribute in any other way aside from, occasionally dropping the gloves. That's not what I'm advocating for. But you watch this Jets team, and I don't know that they are tough enough to play against, that they can impose some of their physical will on their opponent. I'm not saying you put out pylons who get skated around but occasionally will drop the gloves. That's not what I'm advocating for. I just don't know if the Jets make it tough enough on their opponent to play against. And whatever you think about the Leafs, and I mean, I think that all this character on their team is overrated, and I think they've gone a little bit ridiculous with that. A guy like Wayne Simmons, who's not hugely impactful anymore, is hard to play against. You look back to Tampa Bay last year, what they did at the Stanley, before the trade deadline. Who'd they acquire? They acquired Zach Bogosian. Hard to play against. Not great, not a fantastic player. We know what Zach Bogosian is. He's out of the Leafs lineup for the next month. That was announced yesterday. But Bogosian for Tampa Bay was hard to play against. Barclay Goodrow, hard to play against. Who's the other guy that they got? Blake Coleman from New Jersey, harder to play against. I don't know that the Jets are hard enough to play against come playoff time, Dave.
Well, I mean, and I think that comes back to that idea of attrition, right? You have to pay a price to be in front of the net. And again, we'll see what happens with this Jets team. I mean, I think the most disappointing thing for folks who are watching that game was that they were expecting a response. Whether there was someone who was going to go out there, and I mean, and to be honest with you, we've seen it a lot from Logan Stanley for the most part this season, when someone on this team has been, targeted, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, and he's been the guy who's stepped up and handled that area of business, if you will, for this Jets team. I think your point is a different one, though. I think you're talking about that idea of making it a war zone in front of Connor Hellebuck, making it a pain to be there, not allowing guys to set up shop in front of the Jets goaltender and really allow them to, have control of that space. Like I said, I think it's one of those areas that the Jets, it's not one of their strengths, right? This isn't a team that's going to physically batter you. And we'll see. I mean, look, that Calgary series in the bubble last year was physical. Now, you lose Mark Scheifele, you lose Patrick Laine and Mason Appleton. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't care what team you are. You're not winning that series when you lose your top center, your top winger, and a important role playing wing, and another important role playing winger. So to me, it doesn't really matter what they would have done. But the Flames, beat up on the Jets pretty effectively last year. So, Derek Forbert's a big boy. He can handle himself. Again, like I said, as and I talked about in the post game, he's probably in a role that's above his pay grade. I think he's probably better suited to being a third pairing guy at this point in his career. And I think what I think is the most important thing for this Winnipeg Jets team is to figure out their identity for this. I mean, again, and that's a buzzword I hate using, but I think this is one of those situations where you've got 10 games left. You need to figure your business out. And that's your defensive pairings. Because again, like I said, Paul Maurice is doing this rotation. He's talking about a rotation, but really the rotation is only with 3 guys. It's Jordy Ben, it's Logan Stanley, and it's Ville Heinola. And that to me is the biggest question mark, because again, if you don't want to be that physical brand team and you want to be in control of the puck and you want to be a puck possession team, I kind of think Ville Heinola should probably be in your lineup then. Even though he's a young guy, I mean, it kind of helps with puck possession when you have a guy who's smooth skating, can handle a little bit of pressure and get that puck and make a good first pass. So to me, if you're not going to be, if you don't want to be a physically imposing team, and I get that they want Jordy Ben, and I'm not going to castigate Jordy Ben for his first game in a month. I didn't think he played. I mean, as he said it, I think he played 11 minutes in that last game. It was ho hum, but I mean, most of the game itself was pretty ho hum. And I think I wouldn't say this is what he's capable of doing in one game. And again, we talked about it when they acquired him. He's better on his off wing than he is. The numbers show that he's a better player on his off wing on the right side than he is on the left. So again, I just think if you're going to want physically. I mean, I know that Logan Stanley doesn't have quote experience, only in his third year of pro hockey. But the point is, and especially not in playoff hockey, but the point is that if you want to have a little bit more of that physicality, then maybe you have that. If you want to have puck possession, well, then you put in Ville Heinola. I just think like you're saying
they're almost like a tweener right now, where you're not sure, they're not even sure what they want to be by the way the roster is being deployed in some regard. If you want Logan Stanley in your lineup to be harder to play against, then that's fine. But choose Logan Stanley. Don't sort of try and straddle both sides of the line, because you're not really doing anything at that point in time.
Yeah, and I think, guys, I said this before, but I mean, this narrative has really only popped up recently. When the Jets are winning, this doesn't seem to be talked about. And
yeah, exactly.
Don't get me wrong. I realize at times, because the Jets defense is a little bit smaller and maybe less physical than, in previous incarnations of this Jets defense. Like we talked about it, no Ben Sherratt, no Dustin Byfuglien, no Tyler Myers. I mean, I do think that is an issue at times, but I don't think that's why the Jets lose some of these games, right? Like the Jets win these games with speed. We know that. I mean, they're an offensive team. I mean, right? Like the New York Islanders, Dallas Stars, like those are more defensive-minded teams. The Jets aren't one of those types of teams. So what I'm saying is you can't manufacture physical players that aren't physical players, right? Like the Jets are what they are at this point. There's no more trades coming. And so we can debate all day long, if the Jets, it would be nice if the Jets could be more physical and everything like that. But when the Jets go on the offensive and they make it difficult and the other team is on their heels and they dictate the pace, this is how the team wins. I mean, they are going to live and die by getting big time performances from players like Nick Ehlers, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor. I mean, I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is a guy, probably up the middle, aside from Adam Lowry, is obviously, the toughest guy to play against. So again, I do think the Jets have players that are tough to play against, but it goes back to what you said before, Drew. I mean, yeah, if you compare the Jets top to bottom with, some of the other quote unquote, contenders in the NHL, yeah, they're maybe not as tough to play against, but going into the playoffs in the first round, I think they have just as good a shot as anybody to come out of this North Division.
Yeah, I agree that they have just as good a shot, but you just said it yourself, and Dave said it before, and I do agree with you both. If the Jets are at their best when they're a skilled puck-moving team, how is it that Ville Heinola isn't in your lineup at that point in time? I mean,
yeah, but we're beating a dead horse here. Like we all agree with that. Like there's no debate here. Like we all agree. Out of
you don't have to be a physical team. Sorry, Ezzy, you don't have to be a physical team. If the puck is in your zone and out of your zone really quick because you're a puck moving team.
Look at the 2016-17 Pittsburgh Penguins. How many tough players and physical players were on that team? What I remember is Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Jake Gensel, Brian Rust, Chris Letang. Like, do you see where I'm going with this, guys?
Yeah, puck moving.
The Pittsburgh Penguins were not like the 2011 Bruins, right? Like, so not every team that ultimately wins the Stanley Cup has to be the most physical team of the teams that you play in the playoffs.
But they have to have an identity that defines how they want to play, which was what Dave was saying, which is if you want to be a puck moving team, if you're not going to win a physical battle in your own zone, playing that game night in and night out, the Jets just aren't built that way.
They still have to win physical battles. It's not a question of whether you win physical battles or not. It's a question in those types of games where let's say they're more physical games, Drew. It's how do you manage that? You obviously, hockey's a physical game. You have to, have a response, not necessarily dropping the gloves, but you have to be able to at least try to match the physicality. It doesn't always work. But yeah, I mean, I see where you're going with this. I mean, you have to win using what you're best at. And, sometimes when the Jets aren't, like, look at the game against Edmonton, right? Like that was just a game in which the Jets didn't have anything. There wasn't any, it wasn't even, a physical contest. It was just
last Saturday's game. It was
last Saturday's 3-0
It was a walkover.
Yeah, it was a poor performance. And so I look at this Jets team and I still think, the way they're constructed, again, I'm not saying they're going to win the Stanley Cup. I'm just saying I'm not going into these playoffs here thinking, the Jets are, just because they've lost 5 games against the Oilers, I don't think they're nervous about it. I'm not that nervous about it either, because I think if they're playing the right way going in, I sound like Paul Maurice here, boys, but if they are playing the right way going into the playoffs and they get the goaltending, because we know the Jets are going to have the edge in goal, I think they can beat the Oilers, no problem.
From my perspective, if you're going to lose a physical battle, but the physical battle is happening in the offensive zone, as in the Jets are on the offense, then it's not as big of a deal. The problem is when you're losing physical battles in your defensive zone, and that's what leads to opportunities and scoring chances for the opposition, Dave. That's my perspective, is that the Jets need to be getting the puck out of their zone as quickly as humanly possible, with their best players doing so, and icing the best lineup in order to make that happen. Saturday morning, we're live here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. This segment of the program brought to you by Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, officially declared the funniest place in Winnipeg by Illegal Curve Hockey. For over 30 years, Rumors has been bringing Winnipeg the best in stand-up comedy. To purchase tickets or for a list of performers and showtimes, visit rumorscomedyclub.com. Rumors is champing at the bit to reopen. As soon as they are allowed to do so, as soon as it is safe for them to do so, they're going to be reopened with all of the necessary social distancing rules in place. Don't miss a show. Get on their website, rumorscomedyclub.com. And along those lines, we're pleased to welcome to the program our good friend, the sports editor of the Winnipeg Sun, to continue our discussions about the Winnipeg Jets. Our good buddy Ted Wyman joins us in the bottom left of the screen. Teddy, nice to see you, buddy. How are you?
Morning, guys. Great to be here. First time in the new format, and loving the show. And I spent the week growing out my beard just so I'd fit in.
That's good. That's what we like to see, that kind of dedication from all of our guests, to make sure that they match the motif that's going on between Ezzy and myself. And Dave, well, we'll talk about Dave later off air, but when he's not listening.
His head's on fire.
That's true. You've got more serious issues to deal with.
Ted, when you have to deal with Ezzy and Drew, your head is constantly on fire.
Well, I'd say my hair is on fire, but that ship has sailed a long time ago. Ted, obviously, we brought you on to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. And, the conversation over the last 24, 48 hours, give or take, has been about sort of the physicality and the lack of a response maybe from the Jets on Thursday night to the Leafs' physicality. What were your thoughts on that? Is this Jets team physical enough, tough enough come playoff time, or did they maybe get beat up a little bit by the Leafs on Thursday night?
Interesting question. I keep hearing Paul Maurice talk about how it's going to start getting more like the Central Division, because this North Division has been so full of no-hitters this year. And, when are we going to see that exactly, though? It did seem like one team kind of stepped it up in that area, maybe crossed the line a little bit too. Clearly it was not very well received after the game. And certainly the result of the hit on Adam Lowry does not seem all that, doesn't seem good. Right. But while there's not a lot of toughness in that lineup, and especially if Lowry's hurt, and we've seen Logan Stanley be the guy that's been stepping up a bit, and here he is out of the lineup. So it's, when you've played no hitters all year, it's going to be hard to turn it around and suddenly start playing that physical game down the stretch here. But I really think they're going to have to, because the playoffs are not going to be as easy as it's been throughout this year in the Canadian division.
Ted, there's a really good chance, obviously, that, Adam Lowry isn't going to play tonight versus the Leafs. And, that will probably mean that, Jansen Harkins comes back into the lineup, obviously, if Lowry's not in there. So you're obviously going to also have, other players moving up the lineup. Andrew Copp, maybe we see, Paul Stastny move back to center. But, with 10 games left here, even though the Jets still have a chance at finishing first, who are one or two players on this Jets team? Could be a forward, could be a defenseman, but I think you will probably go with a forward or two. But who do you think has to step up the most here so that we're confident, that the Jets are, rolling the cliche four lines and they have their defense pairings, clicking? Because to me, it seems like, they're getting the offense from Scheifele, Ehlers, Connor. Andrew Copp is obviously having a breakout season, but it still seems like, in the middle six of this Jets group, they're still not quite where you would like them to be.
3 letters, PLD. Honestly, guys, I have been a bit of a harsh critic of Pierre-Luc Dubois I know that he did have a better physical game this last game, and that is important because that is something, as we just discussed, the Jets are going to need, and they're going to need from him, and particularly if Adam Lowry's out of the lineup, his size in the middle becomes so important. But then again, will he even be in the middle with the way things have been switching around on this team and with injuries? But yeah, the thing about Pierre-Luc Dubois that I have a difficult time with is it's just he doesn't really seem to control the puck for more than a millisecond. You know, it's on his stick and then it rolls off his stick. He's not taking passes very well. He had a chance at a one-timer the other day. He whiffed on the shot. There's just something not right with him. He's just not comfortable. And I'm among those that's willing to look at it and say this has been a very difficult situation for him coming in here. It hasn't been all that, it hasn't been easy. It hasn't worked super well in terms of him fitting in and finding his spot because he's certainly been moved around a lot and he's had to change teams and he's the youngest player on the team. But you'd like to see just a little more touch with him, a little more finish, a little more contribution to the offense, because as you said, Scheifele's been great. Ehlers and Connor have been great. They've been putting it up, but that secondary scoring from a player like that, who you really expected from, really hasn't been there.
You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms Saturday morning. Our guest is the sports editor of the Winnipeg Sun. He also covers the Winnipeg Jets. Our good buddy Ted Wyman joins us.
Ted, the Paul Maurice talked about that idea of a rotation, and he said, there's Jordy Ben, there's Ville Heinola, there's Logan Stanley. We were talking about this idea of a team identity. Do you think it's time for him to continue to play both, more than one guy a shot? Because you don't have a lot of games. You only have 10 games left. So there's not really a lot of runway here for him to kind of, audition guys. So how do you see this kind of running down the stretch? Paul Maurice, we know, tends to defer to veteran experience over inexperience. But what do you see him doing in terms of that trio, and which one of those guys most likely do you see to kind of get the majority of playing time?
Well, I don't see this as being the time for experimentation, to be honest, guys. It's 10 games away from the playoffs. And I've been sort of beating this horse for a while, even much earlier in the season, saying it's time to really, nail down what these lines are going to be and nail down what these defense pairings are going to be and run with it and make it a consistent thing so that you're ready when the playoffs come. Well, now it's getting awfully close, and now they don't even have the option because there is an injury situation up front. But then you've also got all these D-men, like you said, and how are you working them into the mix? Is Logan Stanley best served by going in and out of the lineup? Is Ville Heinola best served by barely playing at all? Are these defense pairings, other than what we've seen with Pionk and Forbert, that's been pretty consistent. In fact, very consistent all season long. Everybody else has moved around and played with different guys. And, they're professional hockey players and they're good players, so they can deal with it. But is that the optimum situation? In my opinion, you're going to have to pick a lineup and stick with it as best you can. If there are injuries, so be it. But I don't understand the idea of kind of changing it every night here when you're getting so close to the most important games of the year.
Ted Wyman, our guest. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube, live on all of our social media platforms, talking about the Jets and the Leafs. That goes tonight a little bit after 6 o'clock. And of course, the post-game show after the final buzzer back here on our YouTube channel. Ted, ever since the Jets acquired Pierre-Luc Dubois earlier in the year, everyone sort of thought, okay, the Jets go up the middle with Scheifele, Dubois, Stastny, and then Lowry. It hasn't happened. Not once have the Jets done that. Now, we know that's probably not going to start to happen now with Lowry likely out of the lineup tonight. What's it going to take, or is it just not even a topic worth considering anymore, the idea of Scheifele, Dubois, Stastny? It seems like that was a no-brainer, yet Paul Maurice hasn't gone to it once this year.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen, and I think the reason is that Nate Thompson is an important part of this hockey team and kind of your prototypical fourth-line center. And it seems to me that that's a player that they really want to have in the lineup. He's a very good penalty killer. He's a veteran, obviously a really good guy in the room. I guess I'm not suggesting that this team hinges on having Nate Thompson in the lineup. Obviously, I'm not, but I think Paul Maurice really likes him and likes having that veteran presence. He and Lewis and Matthew Perreault have certainly been a very good fourth line, one of the best fourth lines we've seen in Winnipeg for a long time. And would it be any different if you had Lowry there on the fourth line and Stastny up the middle? Well, probably not. But again, I really doubt that a change like that is in the offing. So we're seeing either Stastny or Dubois play on the wing most of the time. And it seems like that's been okay. I think Stastny certainly is a professional, to the nth degree, and he's gone over and played left wing and done a pretty good job with it. But are they fully utilizing the fact that they have such great center depth? Well, I'm not so sure about that.
Right. So to that point, sorry, Lowry, not going to play tonight. Let's assume he's not going to play tonight. Doesn't it make more sense to put Stastny in that spot, or Dubois, or whomever, rather than Andrew Kopp, who I don't believe has played a game at center all year, and the Jets have basically labeled him as a winger, from his start here in Winnipeg? It just seems odd to me that the Lowry injury and your decision is to move Kopp into the middle rather than one of the actual bona fide centermen you have on your roster.
Yeah, it's just a matter of what your top six is going to look like, but we all know that Kopp can move up and play left wing on any of those lines, and look at the points the guy's put up this year. I mean, he's a legit scoring player this year, so it doesn't seem to be a fluke because it's continued all season long. Mm-hmm. But he also is a good center, and I think he likes playing center and wants to play center, and very understanding of his responsibilities as a checking center, and that might be a little bit different with a Stastny or a Dubois. In fact, we know it is. So you'd have to think that would be part of the thinking. If you are going to use Kopp in that center role, he knows it, right? He's been there, and he can. I think it maybe gives you the least amount of transition from one spot to the other.
Exactly. I agree with that, Ted, because you obviously have the familiarity with Kopp, Appleton, and Perreault on the third line. I wanted to go back to Pierre-Luc Dubois. And I agree. I think he's definitely one of those players for the Jets that has to step up. But I wanted to go back to the trade because it seems like it was so long ago, but it was less than 3 months ago, if my math is correct. And, we're obviously going to be talking about this trade, Ted, for probably 10 years, right? Like, it's going to be the Evander Kane trade, even though I think most people would agree the Jets won that trade. But how surprised are you with how badly it has gone for both Line A and Roslovic? Obviously, Roslovic was on fire, when he first started playing for the Blue Jackets, but, both players have been healthy scratched. The Blue Jackets are one of the most disappointing teams in the league. I think you'd agree. They're not going to make the playoffs. Most likely Torts is gone. But what have you just made of this trade overall? Because I think you could agree that maybe with the exception of Roslovic, two of these three players have been disappointing.
When I used to play fantasy baseball, excuse me, guys. When I used to play fantasy baseball, there was a few guys in the league that would always joke that it's only a trade if it's bad for everybody. So it hasn't worked out very well for anyone, not at least the way that it was expected. Like, hey man, like, I've always had these high expectations for Patrik Laine. We saw him, what he could do early on in his career. We saw him score 44 goals. We saw a kind of dominance, a 5-goal game, a kind of scoring dominance that there are very, very few players in professional hockey that have that kind of dominance. And you kind of just thought it was going to get bigger and better. And I think people were envisioning 60-goal seasons. And then now where is he? No confidence other than that one unbelievable goal. I mean, that goal was just ridiculous. And that's how Patrik Laine is. He's he can do that, right? He has that skill set, but it's 1 in 30 rushes that work that way for him, unfortunately. So I am surprised. I really am. And I'm surprised at how hard it's been for Dubois to fit in here in Winnipeg and to find his game. There's flashes there. There's bits and pieces. There's size. There's so much about him that is that looks fantastic. Like, you think you're getting a great player, and you probably are somewhere down the road. but he's not providing that great player performance right now. So, yeah, and Roslovic, like you said, what a great start he had there in Columbus. But, I mean, we saw Jack here in Winnipeg. We know that he has maybe more potential than he's been able to live up to so far, and really didn't show it that much when he was in Winnipeg.
You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel Saturday morning, about 20 minutes before the top of the hour. Ted Wyman of the Winnipeg Sun is our guest as we talk about the Winnipeg Jets.
No, we're not just talking about the Winnipeg Jets with Teddy. We're talking about the Manitoba Moose, because he just recently wrote a big article on Jets. Well, I guess it's also a Jets 2020 first rounder, Cole Perfetti. OHL season got canceled. Teddy, and you had an opportunity to catch up with Cole Perfetti. So what did you come away with from that experience?
Well, first of all, it's pretty cool when you go on a Moose Zoom call and you're the only guy on it and you get to do a one-on-one interview. So that was pretty good. Dave, I think, was driving or something. So
I had to pull over. It was happening, and literally as I was in the car, you and I were texting back and forth. I got on. I talked to Nelson Doge for a little bit, but it was a little bit broken up because I'm trying to do a Zoom interview on the side of a road. So I had to get off because it wasn't really working.
I have done those kind of interviews, not over Zoom, but just those ones where you have to pull over to talk to somebody and do a recording. But you know what? Cole Perfetti, you've had a chance, obviously, to talk to him, Dave. And, he's really an interesting guy, and he's very smart, especially for his age, and very well-spoken. And I really wanted to touch base with him on the OHL season being canceled, because he should be in the OHL right now. I mean, by all standards of hockey and his development, that's where he should be and would be, and he'd be putting up 100+ points this season in a normal year. And they were going to try to have a shortened season in the OHL, which he would have had to go back for, because he's he's not really eligible to even be playing in the AHL under normal circumstances. Mm-hmm. But he was obviously very upset, especially for overage players in the OHL who are never going to get a chance to get that season back, and for guys who are in their draft years who are trying to impress somebody and haven't even had that opportunity to do so. I think that's really a difficult situation for so many guys, and he's heartbroken for them, for his friends and for his colleagues and for his age cohorts. And then when but then it's not been a terrible situation for him at all, because here he is playing in the American Hockey League with men as old as 9 years older than him on the Moose, and he's learning an immense amount about this pro game. And he's, in his own opinion, his development has come a very long way since the beginning of the season, and he feels a lot more comfortable in all zones. He really wants to be a 200-foot player, and he feels like that's what he's working on right now and getting better at. And that's nothing but good news for the Winnipeg Jets, right? I mean, it's taken Mark Scheifele an awfully long time to get to that point, and even now there's still people that question whether he's that great 200-foot player, right? Like, he is a very, very good one. He's obviously excellent offensively, but sometimes he still has his struggles defensively. And so the sooner that a guy is building on that and learning that part of the game and at a pro level, the better for this organization. And I think that Cole Perfetti is benefiting, and he's handling it extremely well. And again, talk about nice goals. He went out that night after talking to him and scored an end-to-end rush beauty. And, if you're a Jets fan looking forward to the future, that's one to keep an eye on, because, he looks like he's going to be a really, really strong player for them down the road here.
That certainly was a beautiful goal by Cole Perfetti earlier this week. Ted Wyman, last question for you. Connor Hellebuck came out yesterday after practice and said, basically, I don't agree with being pulled. I didn't think I had my A+ material, but I thought the pull came too quickly. I'm paraphrasing. We're used to Hellebuck being honest and being nothing but effusive in praise for his own game. Were you surprised at his comments yesterday, talking about being pulled by Paul Maurice?
No, not surprised. That's classic Connor Hellebuck. I still remember the beginning of the 2019-20 season. I was in New York, and I'm covering that team as they lose 5-4, 6-4 to the Rangers, and the 5 goals were garbage against Hellebuck, and the Jets outplayed them all night, and they lost. And he said, I like my game, and adamantly liked his game. And everybody was like, what is he talking about? But then he went out and won the Vezina Trophy that year. Let's not forget that. That's a pretty important point and all that. But that's him, right? And here he is again. Come on, 3 goals on 6 shots, and some of those were not good goals. I mean, yeah, it's Austin Matthews, but from that shooting position, how often do players score in the National Hockey League right now in that situation? And certainly on Connor Hellebuck, it doesn't happen very often. So he didn't have his best stuff at all. And I think Paul Maurice actually made the right move because it actually did help the Jets kind of stay in that game. I thought Brossoit played pretty well. So sometimes you just have to do it from a coach's standpoint. You just have to do something to shake it up when it's not going so well. And clearly, I didn't think Hellebuck had his best stuff. Now, the one thing for the Jets that's great news is how often does he not have his best stuff 2 games in a row? Not very often. So you would expect Connor Hellebuck to be coming out tonight and having a Vezina-worthy performance. And to be totally honest, the Jets really need it from him because so many of their games lately have been about goaltending. And sometimes it's been the poor goaltending of the other team. Sometimes it's been the great goaltending of their team. And in this last case, the poor goaltending of Hellebuck was really the story of that game because it would have been a much, much different result, in my opinion, had the Jets not, found themselves in a 2-0 hole 30 seconds into the game or whatever it was.
The Jets and the Leafs puck drop tonight will be a little bit past 6 p.m. The Winnipeg Sun will have complete coverage of tonight's contest. Ted Wyman is the sports editor for the Winnipeg Sun. He's a good friend of us here with Illegal Curve. Ted, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Great to be here, guys. Have a great show.
Likewise, Ted. Take care. All the best.
Thanks, Ted.
There he goes. Ted Wyman joining us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Let's pay some bills. When we come back, more Jets talk. We talk about the lineup for tonight's game, likely with Adam Lowry being out. We'll talk more about Hellebuck and his comments. Much more to come, much more Jets talk to come. The comments are flying fast and furious. Come join the chat. You're watching, you're chatting, you're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly, see lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, we're back with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. This segment of the program brought to you by Dr. Les Reiches and the team at Linden Market Dental Center, official dentist of Illegal Curve Hockey. Don't be an Ezzy. Always wear a mouth guard and give yourself peace of mind protection as well as facial, teeth, and mouth protection. To make an appointment to get your teeth tooting, visit lindenmarketdentalcenter.com. So the Jets are taking an optional skate this morning. As we find out more information from the Jets Game Day skate, we'll bring it to you live here on the program, but no news so far regarding the status of Adam Lowry for tonight's contest. He wasn't out on the ice for the optional. I would suggest it, as he said in the first segment, quite doubtful that he'll play tonight, having taken that hit from Alex Galchenyuk on Thursday. Guys, from my perspective, I don't understand why it's Andrew Kopp who moves into the middle tonight. I mean, I would try. This seems like
he is a natural center, though. He played center in college. He played center for the Moose.
I get that.
Just like you're a natural host, Drew.
Yeah, I get that. He's not a fish out of water.
I would just say, and on that third line, he's not going to be on, he's fine as a third line center. I don't actually have a problem with that.
It's not that I have a problem with it, because I have no doubts that he is a centerman and can perform the role. You look at the roster and you have Scheifele, Dubois, and Stastny sitting there in your top six. Why not take this opportunity? It's unfortunate, of course, that Adam Lowry is out of the lineup. Why not try and run those three centermen up the middle with Nate Thompson as your fourth centerman? And you shuffle some other things around, and Kopp has played top six wing for this team many times this year. I just don't know why you don't sort of try it out right now, take advantage of that, of the unfortunate injury to Adam Lowry, especially in tonight's contest.
Yeah, I got to agree with Drew, Dave. I hate to agree with Drew, but I mean, and Dave is right, of course, though. I mean, Kopp is a natural center.
Yeah, he can play center, no question.
Yeah. So Ted Wyman mentioned, I mean, the reasoning is he was right. I mean, it's because that requires the least amount of tinkering in your lineup, right? Because, Kopp stays on the same line. Perreault comes up. We know Perreault has played a lot on the third line over the years. And then Jansen Harkins, Dave, slots right in on the wing with Nate Thompson and Trevor Lewis. So it's the most logical and easy thing to do. And back to your point, Drew, if you're going to run with Scheifele, Dubois, Stastny, Lowry in the playoffs, which is very similar to what they did in 2018 when you had Scheifele, Stastny, Lowry, and Brian Little, who was your third line center, you had the most success. So I'm with you. And obviously, Ted Wyman mentioned this. Paul Maurice is hesitant to move Nate Thompson out of that 4C hole, right? Because, Lowry would move down. I'm talking about if Lowry's in the lineup, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what you're saying, Drew, is even with Lowry in the lineup, even without Lowry in the lineup, you're not doing that. So it's surprising. It really is, because look, if anybody is saying that they didn't think that was going to be the Jets center depth when that trade occurred and when Stastny was acquired in the offseason, they're lying. I'm sorry. When Dubois was acquired for Lyon and Roslovic, you thought, okay, Dubois is your second line center. Obviously, Scheifele's number one. You have Stastny number three, and then you've got Lowry. But it looks like it's not going to happen. Now let's wait and see. 10 games is not a lot, but we'll see what happens. Especially if Lowry remains out of the lineup. I wouldn't be shocked if you see Stastny play a little bit of center, because of course Stastny has played a bit of center, but it hasn't been a lot this year on this Jets team. So you're not going to get any arguments from me, Drew. I think, why not use your center depth to the best of your ability, right? You want to maximize the talent on your team.
Look, you don't know how long
he isn't.
You don't know how long Lowry is going to be out of the lineup, and hopefully, from the Jets' perspective, it's a short-term absence. But I just think that you have this opportunity with the injury where you can try and experiment to see what you have with Scheifele, Dubois, Stastny going 1, 2, 3 up the middle. It just, to me, doesn't seem like it seems like a missed opportunity by Jets head coach Paul Maurice, Dave, despite the fact that Kopp has experience at the center ice position.
Yeah, but I mean, sure, you can lament it, I guess, but at the end of the day, he's the one who has to live with those decisions and make those decisions. So, I mean, look what he used in practice yesterday, right? You had Kopp with Perreault and Appleton, you had Stastny with Dubois and Ehlers. So he's obviously going to roll with that. And you can say, why doesn't he do it? But I mean, why doesn't he play Ville Heinola? Why doesn't he play Logan Stanley? Why does he insist on having Tucker Pullman as a first pairing defenseman? There's lots of questions that sometimes you're a little bit mystified as to why he does. And sometimes it puts his team into a position that's less than ideal. And look, and the reality is this, everybody's entitled to their opinion. It doesn't make them right. right? But you're allowed to have an opinion. That's what no, I'm just saying that it's one thing. Sometimes people are very emphatic and passionate, and I get it. But at the same time, you don't know that whatever you're saying is right. You're speculating. It's conjecture. You can say, well, this is what I think would look ideal for this team. And again, like I said, and that applies to us, that applies to people in the chat, that applies to anyone really. And so again, my opinion, Andrew Kopp can slot in anywhere. He's that versatile a player. He's that Swiss Army knife guy who can, if you need him to play on the wing, then he'll play on the wing and he'll do fine. He's responsible. And if you want him to play center, then you know what, he'll play center. And I think it's incumbent on Paul Maurice to really give these guys, again, you don't want to see 3-minute shifts. And obviously I'm being, it's a bit of hyperbole for me, but you don't want to see these guys overreaching. You really need to see this team have balance. And I think that is the key down the stretch, is to really show some balance, because look, Perreault, Kopp, and Appleton can look that potentially has some possibility to do some damage. That's a good third line. That's an effective third line. That's a third line that can score goals for you and to be defensively responsible. So again, it's not a function of not liking Kopp as a third line center. I'm fine with it. I like I said, I think he's versatile enough to play anywhere the Jets need him to. I just think you have to give him that opportunity. And so, the truth is now I was just gonna say quickly, as the reality is this, we'll see what happens with Adam Lowry. We should be finding out fairly soon. I would imagine Jets are probably doing media availability starting now, because it was an optional skate this morning at the at downtown arena. So we'll certainly see very soon.
Unnamed corporate arena.
No, I don't really care. Whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. But the point is that
Bell MTS Place.
Yeah, there you go. So it's not Voldemort. We can say the name. Oh, I guess I just said Voldemort. But the point is, I think this is a situation where, I don't know that you're going to lose a lot by having Andrew Kopp. I think whether he's your second line winger or your third line center, I think you're getting a good player in either spot. And I don't know that, again, like I said, I'm fine with having Stastny. Stastny in the latter part of his career, he's a smart player. Maybe he's better suited to being that third line center, and having Kopp with a little bit more production. We'll see, but I don't know. Again, like I said, we'll see very soon what the Jets are going to do at warm-up skate, I guess, at 5:30.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think you would agree, guys. Yeah, well, I think you would agree that it's not so much tonight's game that's important. I think it's what happens in these next 10 games, Dave, and what happens going into the playoffs, right? Because you look at the Oilers' center depth, and obviously when they have Draisaitl and McDavid split up and they're both playing center as opposed to on the same line, which we've seen just recently, right? You're top heavy, but the Jets' center depth is much better than the Oilers. And the reason why I'm comparing them to the Oilers, not the Leafs, is because, of course, they might play the Oilers. They probably will play the Oilers in the first round. And so I think, to your point, Drew, when you have Paul Stastny, able to be on the third line, and you have Adam Lowry as your fourth line center, I think you can really maximize your center depth, and that's a competitive advantage over the Oilers.
And exactly. And before we get to talking more about the Oilers, who are in town to play the Jets Monday and Wednesday of next week, we're pleased to talk more about the Toronto Maple Leafs with David Alter, who covers the Leafs for the Hockey News, a good friend of the program. David, nice to see you. How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, good to see you guys. This is my first time in this iteration of the show. You guys are looking great.
Well, I think you might need to get your vision checked, but that's a separate issue altogether there, David. But we appreciate the compliment, and we'll say thank you very much nonetheless. Obviously, David, Thursday night was a bit of a heated contest between the Jets and the Leafs, and I think we'd expect very similar tonight. A lot of physicality, a lot of maybe some post-game emotions were running high even yesterday with the media availabilities, the back and forth about the Leafs being dirty or the Leafs being physical. From your perspective, a guy who watches the Leafs night in and night out, has the word dirty ever crossed your mind as it pertains to the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I can't say it has. And I think Wayne Simmons kind of summed it up best, because I was a little bit surprised. I didn't tune into the Jets availability. So when I saw that was the theme, I was kind of a bit surprised. That game between both teams was pretty chippy. And the one thing I've noticed with the Leafs and a big complaint has kind of been officiating. They seem to get a lot of missed calls against them. And I think maybe that's kind of boiling over and kind of compounding for the Leafs, that maybe they felt that they should be a little bit more aggressive in that game. And that surprised me a little bit. But in terms of dirty, I don't think so. If anything, the big criticism we hear from the Leafs is when one of their players get hurt, that there isn't enough of a physical response from the rest of the teammates. So it did surprise me a bit. But these two teams are battling for a lot right now. And so I'm not surprised that tensions are flaring up a little bit as we get to the crunch time of the season, really.
Dave, what did you think of Nick Foligno's debut? Obviously, the Leafs won the game, but, we were talking about it, after the trade deadline, and, Drew's opinion was they maybe gave up a little bit too much to acquire Foligno, but obviously he's playing.
No maybe in my mind. They gave up too much.
No maybe.
Mind, clearly.
Yeah, and I guess if the Leafs go far in the playoffs, then you can maybe say it was worth it. But do you expect Foligno to stick on Austin Matthews' line, and how do you see him being used? What did you think of the trade overall? And obviously, as I mentioned before, his first game as a member of the hometown Leafs.
I think he very well could stick on that line. If anything, he's not going to fall below the top two lines. He'll either be the left wing of that line or with Tavares and Nylander, and those are both skilled lines where Foligno fits perfectly. And I thought he did a good job, all things considered. You go through a quarantine. They didn't really have a full practice. He kind of had some ice to himself when he got to Winnipeg and then joined the team with this compressed schedule. What the Leafs have been doing is using morning skates as pseudo practices if they didn't practice the day before, and that was where Foligno really kind of got a sense of his line mates. But I thought he fit in great. I think the fact that he's super enthusiastic about being a Maple Leaf is something that's very welcome to the team. Obviously, his father was part of the 93 run here, and the fact that he went out and made a speech about what it means to him, I think, can rub off as part of the leadership dynamic that they're trying to bring to the younger players, like they did with Thornton and Simmons and Bogosian as well, with all those players who are veterans who are passionate about the game. And I thought he fit in pretty well. He didn't look out of place. I think he'll only get better in that spot. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him on the power play with more reps. I was kind of surprised it didn't happen in the first game, but I thought maybe because there wasn't a practice, they didn't want to put in too much too quickly. So they had him on the PK in that spot, and I think he looked great with Marner on the PK as well. And as far as giving up too much, on the surface, I think that's fair. I think Taylor Hall agrees with you, because I still think that the reason he wore 71 was a troll to that, because I don't see any other reason why he wore 71. And I don't know if anyone's asked Taylor Hall about why he's wearing 71, because it was such a out of left field number for him to wear with the Bruins. But anyway, I think when you look at it, the Leafs are really about what they're going to be like for the next few years. That first round pick is probably not going to service them much because they have so many prospects. And the fact that they had to ask two different teams to reduce the salary to fit him in also plays a role into that. So I think that had a lot to do with why the return was so high. But for what the Leafs needed, I think he fit better for what the Leafs needed as opposed to someone like Taylor Hall, who only got a second round pick with Boston.
Saturday morning, you're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. The Jets and the Maple Leafs, the second of the two-game series, goes later on tonight. David Alter covers the Toronto Maple Leafs for the Hockey News. He joins us now on the program.
David, the Leafs acquired Big Save Dave at the trade deadline, and one of the, Jack Campbell was on that unbelievable run, and everybody was talking about him, hit a bit of a stumbling block, and it looked like we were going to see some fire wagon hockey here on Thursday based on that, the first 5 minutes of that game. But do you think he's kind of solidified his spot? Do you think like that's going to be the way they're going to run, or do you think they're still planning on seeing what happens with Frederik Andersen and getting him back into the lineup?
I still think the plan is to try and get Frederik Andersen back at some point. In Vancouver, he was starting to take part in the tail end of practice sessions with the Leafs. He hasn't been part of a full practice yet, but Frederik Andersen's situation has been a little bit bizarre because he went from playing to nowhere in sight, and then the Leafs used his cap exception to add those players like Foligno and a bunch of others, and like Riddick. And look, the thing with Campbell is he's been good, but he doesn't have the track record yet that the Leafs can really put all their chips behind him. That's why they got someone like Riddick, and they're still hoping that someone like Anderson can be ready, because they still respect his game a lot, and they do feel that a healthy Frederik Andersen is the way to go in that respect. So it's tricky. I think the Leafs are masters when it comes to knowing what they can and can't do with the salary cap. And I think with the situation that presented themselves, bringing in someone like Big Save Dave made a lot of sense for how little he counted against the cap. But I think you saw in his performance in that second game against the Canucks that goaltending depth is incredibly important, and the goalies can be a little bit streaky, and they need some stability there. And I still think Frederik Andersen is a part of that. Jack Campbell had a good response game, but I still think we need to see a lot more games from Campbell on a consistent basis to really know what he is going forward.
Come playoff time, David, goaltending matters even more than the regular season. Winnipeg, Connor Hellebuyck. Montreal, Carey Price, assuming he's back from his concussion in time for the playoffs. You know, in Edmonton, Mike Smith has been outstanding this year. In Toronto, it's obviously the biggest question. Why will goaltending succeed come this playoff time for the Leafs when it has cost them and failed them so many years previous, with Freddie Andersen as the goalie of record?
If I'm going to tell you why it will succeed, I think it's depth is the secondary reason, and one, it could be a fully healthy, rested Frederik Andersen. He admitted that he was playing hurt, and I think he has a lot to prove. I don't think he's going to try to force things, but I think he's definitely a man on the mission, trying to have a big year in a contract year and show that his regular season performance wasn't indicative of what he can provide to other teams or even the Maple Leafs if he chooses to go that route. So I think that's why it will succeed. Why it won't succeed, I mean, it's been tricky. The Leafs goaltending situation with Andersen over the last few years, there have been a couple of bad goal scenarios, and there hasn't been a goaltending performance, I should say, that has stolen games. What we've seen in playoffs is goalies rise to be the hero at times, and when it looks like the team is down and out, a goaltender comes in and really defies all the analytics and metrics and really steals one out and changes the momentum. It's one of those things where the analytics tell a lot of the story, but in the playoffs, when things are decided in such moments, it can be thrown out the window at times. And so that's really going to be the measure of what the Leafs are in the playoffs, is if that goaltending can steal games, because there's going to be situations where they're behind and they need a dominant goaltending performance to kind of get them through. So we'll see if they can get that. It's not really been the measure of the Leafs playoff success over the last, I don't know how many years.
Yeah, I think it's some good points that you make there, Dave, because I think we would all agree that the goaltending depth is as good as it's been in a long time by bringing in Big Save Dave. But I also think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. As you mentioned, Freddie Andersen's healthy, and if he's playing well, you've had Jack Campbell, who has been just so good with the exception of a few games maybe. So I think, if they do have to turn to Jack Campbell, that's obviously not going to be a bad thing because he's been so solid all year long. But I wanted to ask you about Austin Matthews. And, obviously, we've talked a lot about Matthews over the years, first overall pick, Lion A going second overall. But, watching him, throughout this season, not just against the Jets, and he obviously scored a nice goal the other night against the Jets to open up the scoring, even though, some people thought Hellebuyck maybe should have had that one. But it's easy to say, for us, not going up against a guy who has 34 goals. But I wanted to ask you, do you think he's being overshadowed a little bit? And I realize, some people in the chat are going to go absolutely nuts on me here, Dave, but with the way Connor McDavid is playing, do you think his season is being overshadowed a little bit? Because you look at on a goals per game basis, Austin Matthews. Not just
people in the chat. I'm going to go nuts on you too for even asking the question.
Well, but let's be honest, guys. Connor McDavid is going to win the Hart Trophy. If he doesn't, I think everyone should have their heads examined who's voting for that award. But, Austin Matthews has a really good chance to hit 40 goals in a 56-game season. I guess, I just feel like, sometimes we're not talking enough about how good Matthews has been this year.
Yeah, he's taken it to another level. It's that thing where when you have elite players, they say that fifth year in the league is the year they really start to play at their max potential. Like they've reached that pinnacle and they're going to carry it forward that way. And the goals Austin Matthews was scoring were unbelievable. Like the precision of his shot, where he was getting these goals, the dangles around to just confuse goaltenders, the positions that he's found himself in. And the one thing that hasn't really been talked about a lot this year compared to other years is his 200-foot game. Like he really is on all sides of the puck, being that prototypical elite center that you can rely on in that spot. And so I think that's probably what gets people kind of crazy and talking a lot about Matthews. I'm sure it's the Toronto bias too. Anything that happens in Toronto gets talked about a lot. We understand. We accept that. Connor McDavid's not going to get maybe as much talk, but I think he does elevate that profile 10 times over in Edmonton. And what Connor McDavid's been able to do throughout his entire career has been amazing. The other thing too is a lot gets talked about those two guys specifically because we're in this North Division. And it was the first time where we found out that they trained together in the off season and kind of shared trade secrets to some degree, and still haven't quite figured out each other as a player to scout against. So that's kind of added to that dynamic of Matthews versus McDavid as well, that we haven't really had in previous years. So I think you're right. I think McDavid is the number one for the Hart right now. But Matthews has also been playing on an injured wrist, and it's kept him out of games, and he's managed to do what he's done while managing an injury as well, which, I mean, you could say rightly or wrongly, he's sharing that like it's a thing. So I think it just kind of speaks to the different level. I think Matthews has taken perhaps the biggest jump from year 4 to year 5 that anyone's seen, where we're almost at this McDavid echelon right now. We almost expect it from him. And that's not diminishing what McDavid's done, but it's actually the opposite, where we just expect greatness and the ridiculousness of what he can do to opponents across the league, that it's not as eye-opening or jarring as maybe what Matthews has done this year from year 4 to year 5. So I think that's where a lot of that comes into play as well.
You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's a bright and sunny Saturday morning. I am your host, Drew Mandel, joined by Dave Minuk and Ezra Ginsburg. David Alter covers the Toronto Maple Leafs for the Hockey News. He's our guest on the program, discussing the Leafs ahead of the Jets and the Leafs. The rematch goes later on tonight.
Well, Dave, we've talked about the Leafs in the playoffs, and we know how important it is for this team to advance and make some noise really this year, especially considering the moves they've made. But given the nature of this season and its unprecedented nature, does that remove an element of the pressure on guys like Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe because of that? Or is the pressure because they went all in and because they made these big moves to be a challenger? If they don't have success outside of this North Division, is there still going to be some sort of repercussions?
I think the pressure has never been higher on Dubas and management for the reasons that, listen, the Leafs have always been able to kind of not rest on their laurels, but kind of say, look, I mean, we always had Boston and we always had to deal with in our division. And that's always been who we've matched up with in the opening round. And that's, sorry, my dog is, my dog doesn't like when I don't give her attention.
What kind of dog?
It's a husky.
Oh my!
Let's see. She'll eventually make herself present, but for now she's.
She's growling.
Yeah, she's just playing. She knows if I'm giving attention, that's not on her. Like if I wasn't on this right now, she'd be fine. But she knows that my attention's directed. Anyway, what I was saying is the pressure. The pressure has never been.
Dave, does your dog think the Leafs are a dirty team?
She has a lot of opinions. But the pressure's never been hotter because the Leafs have just never been in a situation where they've had opponents that have historically finished below them in the standings the last few years. Mm-hmm. That's not to diminish the other Canadian teams, but you look at it, and a lot of people on paper going into this season kind of said there's no reason for the Leafs to not finish as the winners in this division going into the Final Four. That might be presumptuous. You probably could look at it. One of the things that I looked at from an elementary stats standpoint was the fact that Frederik Andersen's career stats against Canadian opponents going into the season was something like 52-15. Like, it was something so basic that I looked at. It's like, okay, well, I mean, historically and how these Canadian teams are, they aren't that much different than previous years. The Leafs are the heavy favorites, and there really isn't a reason why that they shouldn't kind of take this division. And the moves that they made and the trades that they've made kind of set themselves up that they really have no excuses that left that they maybe have had in previous years. So I think the pressure has been really hot for the Leafs to do something this year. Not to say that there'll be a fire sale if they go out in the first round again, because they do have a lot of pieces that are set up. But you look at the 1 year only acquisitions that they've had to make because of the salary cap, the message has been pretty clear that this is the year that they have to do some damage. And I think anything short of a Final Four appearance will be a major disappointment for the Leafs and the management team.
Dave, last question for you, and before you leave, though, you do have to show your husky on the screen. Yeah, the people are demanding that. Last question for you. You know, our old friend Zach Bogosian, he's out of the Leafs lineup for the next month or so. How significant of a loss is it to the Leafs blue line?
I was looking at some of the numbers. It's significant. I don't know how big it is. He's really good on the PK in terms of zone denial entries and doing those kind of things that help the Leafs have a pretty decent penalty kill. From a third pair standpoint, that matchup wasn't getting huge competition. I think Dermott's been pretty good in that. I think the biggest loss would have been if he was out earlier in the year, because I think someone like Bogosian's kind of helped Travis Dermott take a big step forward in his game. And so I think now that Travis Dermott's kind of progressed, I think he can kind of take the reins and help someone like Rasmus Sandin, who's going to play in that spot. I think Ben Hutton might get a look or two. He was also one of those players they acquired at the deadline for depth, and that's pretty much in that spot. I do think that on a PK you might see some of the loss there, but apart from that, I think his positive effect has already been reached to the younger players that he was playing with early on. Where I think if this was earlier in the season, it would probably be perhaps more devastating. The biggest positive for the Leafs is the decor has been really healthy, and this is the first long-term injury to any defenseman on the Leafs, which I know with Winnipeg you can't really say, but it's been one of those things. And let me see if I can get the dog. She's now when she wants to be the showpiece, she's being dead weight. Hey.
How big is she?
60 pounds.
Oh,
you're coming up here.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's a good dog.
Beauty.
Yeah, she's got the blue eyes. So yeah, she's very talkative, and she knew that the moment I started giving someone else attention, she was going to talk and chime in. So like this, look at this, like nonstop. So.
A few weeks ago, we had Jason Bell of the Winnipeg Free Press on, and he did the interview with his bird sitting on his shoulder.
Wow.
We're not going to ask you to put your husky on your shoulder, but nonetheless, this show has obviously gone to the dogs, and we appreciate it because more dogs rather than less us. David,
before we let you go, I've been trying to figure out what hat that is. I love the Canadian flag there, but I couldn't tell what the hat was.
Oh yeah, so it's an Oakley hat.
Oakley, yeah.
It's Oakley. Okay.
In terms of gear. And so they made this hat. They had two versions of it. This is the second version where it's like a matte O finish with the leaf there with the flag. And then the brim's got the flag too.
Nice.
Yeah, love it.
So not having a super fantastic hair day, so I decided to put on a hat. Usually I don't wear a hat for these things.
That's okay. Dave Drew isn't either, so.
Yeah, it's true. It's
I kind of worried the moment I said something about hair that someone was going to make a.
I woke up like this last night. I had a full head of hair, and then all of a sudden I woke up this morning and it was all gone.
Yeah.
David Alter covers the Toronto Maple Leafs for the Hockey News. He's a good friend of the program. David, appreciate your time. Enjoy tonight's contest. We'll do it again real soon.
Thanks for having me on, and I'm enjoying the new format. I appreciate it.
Take care, David. Thanks so much. There he goes, David Alter of the Hockey News. And to be perfectly honest, the growling you heard, that wasn't actually David's dog. That was Ezzy's stomach. You could pick it up on the mic. We just wanted to blame the dog for that.
I was trying to figure out what you feed a dog like that. Like my sister has a Shepherd Husky cross, and I don't think it's that big, but it's probably about 50 pounds. So I imagine, that dog probably eats a lot of beefarino.
And on that note, let's pay some bills. When we come back, an update from Winnipeg Jets morning skate, tell you about some lineup changes that we've seen so far. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve Sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We're back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with so many of you this Saturday morning. Nice to see all of you in the very active chat room.
Let me answer Tyke, by the way. It does say David's room. It's a vestige from my childhood. From my first house ever, and my parents gave it to me, and I always keep it along.
There you go. It's a nice.
And people have to know that it's your room, right? Like if somebody's never been in your room before.
Well, it's
informative.
It's actually specifically for Ezzy. I put it on the door as soon as we go to commercial, just in case he gets any ideas. This is David's room.
I can't help it. I like to go into your room and jump on your bed. What can I say?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
No more
Ezzy.
No more Ezzy's jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head, and then he went back on air. So no one.
I was saying, and then he ended up looking like this homeless person in front of us.
That's right. Welcome back. This segment of the program brought to you by Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty, official realtors of Illegal Curve Hockey. When 95% of your clients come via referral, it shows your commitment to honesty, integrity, and a total dedication to client satisfaction. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, come shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia online at zappiagroup.com.
Drew, I know. Nice. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yep.
I was going to say, so nice to see our buddy Frank in yesterday's Winnipeg Free Press.
Yep.
Doing a great job of trying to get some affordable housing for the people in Winnipeg. Some people who need some assistance in maybe getting some housing. And our buddy Frank is certainly taking the lead on that. So that was a great article, a great interview with him in yesterday's Winnipeg Free Press.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Drew read the article as well. And, Frank is doing so many good things, in the community, real estate included. So it was great to see our good friend and longtime sponsor, Zappia Group. I was going to wait a little bit later into the show to pull this out. But, I saw a few people, in the chat that are, guaranteeing Jets wins. I am going to guarantee a Jets win as well. Wow. And if the Jets win, I'm so confident in the Jets winning tonight, I will shave the beard off and get a haircut for the first time since October. So yes, put that on the board, boys. Again,
if they win, that's what you'll do, or if they lose,
no. I want to shave. That's what I'm saying. I want the Jets to win tonight. So if the Jets win, and also Naomi's birthday is coming up in a couple of weeks, and I can't be seen in public like this. So if the Jets win, the beard and the hair will be cut. I'll probably, keep a little bit of the beard. Like it'll be just nice and short.
Can we up the odds by shaving you live on air?
We've done that once before.
Yeah, but that was radio, Dave. That was radio.
That was radio. And that was for just that was Movember. Ezzy and I had done Movember that year, and we shaved live on air. It was funny.
Sure. What the hell? Let's do it.
No. First of all, this is my house. He's not shaving. He can shave his beard if he does that show at somebody else's house. He's not doing it in my. I'll have hair for years in that floor if he shaves. No live shave. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, honestly, last time we did this, like Naomi helped me, and it looked like a husky, like David Alter's dog had just been sheared. Like it's a lot of hair. Because the thing is, like you can see I have a big beard, but like what's happened because I haven't.
We can see that. You're right.
Shaved the beard in 4 months.
Okay, so
I have to admit I have been trimming the mustache, but like it gets curled in here. Like it gets really like it starts to curl up. So this is thick.
Dave,
as exciting as that is, as I'm sure your people are interested in your grooming techniques, but there is an update from head coach Paul Maurice. Adam Lowry has not been diagnosed with a concussion, but he's being held out as a precaution. And he says, and Scott Billick just tweeted, Lowry has passed his test, just not at 100%. So that's important to know. It's good news. It seems like he's not too, and the truth is they just have a few days before that game against the Oilers. So no point in taking a risk. Obviously, if he's not at 100%, you don't put him in anyways, but it sounds like it's good news for Adam Lowry. It sounds like they're going to hold him up for precautionary reasons. So that's that's an important update coming out of the availability with head coach Paul Maurice.
Okay, yes. Can we go back to my beard now?
Yeah, no, please resume. I'm sure everybody in the chat, now that they got that information and they can go to illegalcurve.com and read it, will be able to want to resume your talk about your trimming and your beard.
No, go ahead. Come on, you said it.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just hope that the Jets win because this thing is going to come off. And, the weather's starting to get nicer. And I got to say, Jordy Ben's got a nice little beard going too.
Well, speaking of Jordy Ben, he's out of the Jets lineup. An excellent segue, Ezzy. Appreciate that. He's out of the Jets lineup for tonight's game against the Maple Leafs. Logan Stanley back in for the Jets lineup. And you wonder if the physical nature of Thursday night's game and the discussion we had about that back in the hour number 1 of today's show has any bearing on that decision. But that is important to note as well. So that basically you're going to see 2 lineup changes for the Winnipeg Jets. Jansen Harkins moves back into the lineup with Adam Lowry being held out for precautionary reasons, and Jordy Ben comes out of the lineup and Logan Stanley comes back in. I mean, I'm just confused a little bit. Jordy Ben plays on Thursday night, his first game as a Winnipeg Jet, plays 11 minutes. I don't believe Jordy Ben should be in the top 6 of the Jets lineup. I don't think he's one of the top 6 defensemen on the roster, but I'm not sure what you see or what you don't see from a player playing his first game in a month and playing a grand total of 11 minutes. I'm not sure how much information you can glean from that opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Drew. And that kind of goes back to the downfall of this kind of left side third pairing rotation that we expect here. Right? Because we talked about this with Teddy Wyman during the first hour, right? Like, I think Dave would agree with me. I think you want to see Ville Heinola in the majority of these games, right? So whether that's 5 games, 6 games, maybe it's 9 of 10 games, I have no idea. But there is a downside to using this rotation where, Ben comes in, gets his first game, then Logan Stanley comes in, and then you'd assume against Edmonton, Drew, a team that they've had struggles against this year, that Ville Heinola would come in against Edmonton, right? Because you don't want to have Ville Heinola, missing game. No, I shouldn't say missing games. You don't want to see Ville Heinola not playing games for too long. So that would kind of be my best guess, that Heinola comes into the lineup. But yeah, I don't think, you can really take too much out of one game with Jordy Ben. And I guess you might have been saying as well there in a roundabout way that maybe you expected Ben to play another game in a row. And I do think that Ben is going to get into maybe a few more games down the stretch. But I agree with you. I think you want to see the 6 defensemen that you ideally want to use in the playoffs. You want to see that group here over the next 10 games.
Yeah, I don't know what I expected. I really don't, because it just seems like, Paul Maurice, almost when it comes to that third pairing defense, is flipping a coin. And I'm not sure what his what his decision making is when it comes to these lineup decisions as of late. And I get wanting to see Ben play a game for the Jets. You bring him over from Vancouver, you want to see maybe what you have there, but you play him on the side that he's not as good on, and you play him for 11 minutes. So what did that prove? If and we've talked about it. I just don't see any consistency or any master plan with some of the decision making that's going on the back end as of late.
Well, and just to answer maybe your question, but also the question Ty's been trying to ask me in the chat about Ville Heinola. He's got 4 games left in terms of his ELC. If in terms of he can play 4 more games for the Winnipeg Jets, and then before they burn the ELC. So that's one thing. Maybe it's a factor. I mean, again, ultimately at the end of the day, if you're thinking about winning, then it shouldn't matter. And again, like I said, we've talked about this previously. Blake Wheeler doesn't care about Ville Heinola's ELC sliding another year. Mark Scheifele doesn't care about that. Connor Hellebuck doesn't care about that. Josh Morrissey doesn't care about that. Now, I understand those are considerations for GM Kevin Cheveldayoff, but ultimately, if you think here's, and I agree with that's what I was going to say about Richard. At the end of the day, Paul Maurice doesn't care about the ELC. I mean, again, he's factoring in Ville Heinola and being a Winnipeg Jet long term, but at the same time, he has to put in the lineup that, in theory, of course, he has to put in the lineup he thinks is going to win him games. And if that means you burn Ville Heinola's ELC, then you burn it because, again, like I said, while it's not ideal, while maybe having it slide would be a good thing from a long term perspective. You want to do what's going to be best for
you. Do you really
team.
think that's a consideration?
I know.
Dave?
I'm answering.
No, I'm not saying you were kind of. I didn't think you were. I don't think so. Right? No. Like I really don't. And I know Drew. I don't know if Jansen Harkins how many more games he has left. Drew, maybe I think it's something like 3 or 4 games left before he has to be protected, right? So I mean,
he's got to be protected.
It's not that he's going to be protected. It's
just that he can be an exposed forward. That's it.
That's right. He qualifies as one of the forward, as the Jets needing 2 forwards who've played that 27 games or 54 games over the last 2 years.
So your point, Drew, was that if Harkins doesn't qualify, then you'd probably have to sign Matty Perreault or Nate Thompson, just in order to protect them, right?
Now that I think maybe factors into holding Adam Lowry out of the lineup.
Expose them, Dave. You're right. Yeah. So that's a consideration as well, but maybe not as much of a consideration. But we talked about this on Thursday night's post-game show.
Like, I wanted 4 games away, so after tonight he'll be 3 games away.
Yeah, so there's a good chance that that happens, right? Because we don't know how long Lowry's going to be out of the lineup, but to expect Harkins to play 4 of the next 10 games isn't out of the question. So I do want to see Ville Heinola, guys. Like I realize, again, we're beating a dead horse a little bit here, and Paul Maurice is ultimately the one that makes these decisions. But I think there's a good chance you are going to see Heinola quite a bit down the stretch. I don't know how many games that means, but it could mean 5 games. It could mean 6 games. But I think you got to get him into some games. He can't just be sitting on the sidelines for this long.
I want to make a note about the ELC conversation. Most teams are less concerned about burning a year of ELC. They're more concerned about a player accruing a year towards free agency.
Yeah, it's good for the player. We should be clear about that. It's better for the player.
Which is why, if you remember, Andrew Kopp did he played that one game.
He burns so
2015.
He burnt that year, but he didn't accrue a year towards free agency. You have to play, if I'm not mistaken, it's 40 games in a normal 82 game season in which to get a year closer to unrestricted free agency. So that's not, I don't believe that's a factor at all when it comes to Ville Heinola and his lack of playing time this year for the Jets. The reason he's not playing is coach's decision for the most part, and leaves me at some point in time sort of throwing up my shoulders like this and going, I just don't know anymore.
Do you not think that he's going to play that first game against Edmonton at the very least? Like, I don't think I see.
You mean the game on Monday?
Yeah. I think he goes in on Monday. I think that's part of the rotation you're going to see here with Stan. I don't think you're going to see Jordy Ben a lot. I think you maybe see Jordy Ben 1 or 2 more times, unless there's an injury. But I think you got to have Heinola playing at least half of these games.
I don't know if he hasn't played yet. I don't know why I would expect that he's all of a sudden going to become a regular.
Or he should be playing with the Moose, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, of course, that goes without saying. Him just sitting, maybe there's some value in sitting and watching for a couple of games. It's not for this length of time. There's no value there anymore. That ship has sailed. I mean, I just don't quite understand why if he's going to be a regular for the Jets come playoff time, why he hasn't already been that regular. Get him that additional familiarity with whomever he's likely to be paired with. It would appear to be likely Dylan DeMello, given that, DeMello is sort of the my words, the babysitter, the babysitter for all those new guys who are coming in to the lineup on the back end. I don't quite understand it at all.
See, and we talked about this. Sorry, Drew. I was just going to say we talked about that as well on Thursday night. Like, I want to see Heinola in the top 4. Like, again, I know a lot of this is I want to, hope.
By the way, just breaking news, Ezzy, they just sent Heinola to the Moose.
Are you joking?
No, I swear. The transaction report just came up. Heinola to the Moose. So.
Well, hey, if he's not going to play with the Jets, then I would love to see him play with the Moose, as I just said. So that's great.
The Moose play what, Dave? The next 4 games are at home?
Yeah.
Like they play this afternoon.
They parallel the next 2 games parallel the Jets game. So they play this afternoon today. So they play this afternoon, and they play Monday afternoon.
So I mean, you wonder, does he get into the Moose lineup for today's game? Again, they're playing Stockton, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're playing Stockton. But the reality is, look, Ville Heinola he played the last Moose game he played was against Stockton, actually in March. I think March 13th. Then he played in April. He played April 15th, I think, against the Leafs. So he hasn't played a lot. I mean, that's kind of one of those things you want to make sure you're getting him into games. We've talked about that. So I think it's a good move. And look, we just saw it with. I mean, I actually think the Moose are going to be pretty loaded today. They've been rolling. They have 4 straight wins, and now you add Ville Heinola. Talk about a defensive impact group with Samberg, Heinola, Kovacevic, Kavanke, Noje. They've got.
Dave's getting a little excited.
Dave got a little fired up there.
A little excited. The fire wasn't just above me for a second. So the point is that you've got 5 of the 6 guys who are going to be in the. Oh, and Declan Chisholm, who is day to day. So in theory, you could have 6 Moose defensemen that were all drafted by the Jets playing.
So here's the comments coming from our friends who are not on air right now. Mike McIntyre, Ken Weeb, of course. Ville Heinola will play this afternoon for the Manitoba Moose. Jets head coach Paul Maurice just said they're going to try to cycle guys in and out to get them games wherever possible. So, there you go. There's some logic being at play here when it comes to using the farm team, the Manitoba Moose, over the next week or so. But the Jets leave town on Wednesday, and is the Moose series against Stockton done by Wednesday, or do they play again?
No, they go till Thursday.
They go till Thursday. So I guess there's, really, 2 or 3 more opportunities between now and the Jets heading out on the road for some guys to get games in with the Manitoba Moose. But it is a little curious. I mean, it was Paul Maurice himself. It wasn't us. It was Paul Maurice himself who said that he wanted to try and maybe get the Jets, ideal playoff lineup fine-tuned, but back, before they returned from the road trip. And now we're here. Obviously the Jets are on this 5-game homestand tonight and then Monday, Wednesday against the Oilers. And there's still a fair degree of uncertainty as to how that Jets blue line is going to look come playoff time. Less question marks up front, less question marks with the forward group, because we know who the 12 are that are going to start for the team when everyone's healthy. But the defense is still sort of a bit of an unknown with 10 games to go in the regular season.
Yeah, and I'm more concerned about the top pair than who's going to play in the bottom pair, because I think we would all agree, guys, that Jordy Ben is probably number 8 on the depth chart, right? Like if I would say Logan Stanley right now is, if I had to guess who starts, Drew, like all things being equal, there's no injuries. I would think that Logan Stanley is going to start on that third pair just based on the way he's played all year, and because Ville Heinola hasn't played a lot of games in the NHL. And then if Heinola isn't with the Moose, or if he's up with the Jets, he'll be number 7, number 8, whatever you want to call it there. But I'm more concerned about, what's going on in the top 4, because Derek Forbort, didn't have a good game. We're not singling him out at all, but Morrissey and Poolman, they've played well this year. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not going to start saying, that they've been awful, but I still think that I would like to see Morrissey and DeMello. I think that gives you the best chance at success. That's more of a shutdown group. And then, maybe you have Logan Stanley and Tucker Poolman playing together. I have no problem with that. So that's kind of, I think it's not just Drew. I know what you're saying. Like, there's a lot of uncertainty with the defense in terms of who's going to, really solidify that third pairing. But I also think on that top pairing, which is obviously going to affect the third pairing, that's something. It's the mix as a whole for that D group.
if Adam Lowry is Paul Maurice's security blanket among the forward group, I think Dylan DeMello is his security blanket on the defensive group. And that's why I think you're seeing DeMello play. I don't necessarily agree with playing him in the role that he's playing with, but I think that because Maurice has the least amount of confidence in the third pairing left side defenseman, that's why that player plays with DeMello, because DeMello gives Maurice the same consistent effort. Maurice knows what to get from DeMello night in and night out. That's sort of my... If I had to get inside of Paul Maurice's brain there, that's how I would sort of see why he goes about it that way.
Yeah, but is Neil Pionk and Derek Forbort not your security blanket? Because that's been your pair all year long, right? So if you're talking about security blankets, I mean, that's the pair that you never have to really tinker with, right?
Well,
so I know what you're saying, but why would you be nervous?
You yourself just said that Forbort wasn't great on Thursday, and I don't think Forbort has been great for the last few weeks. He looks tired. If you would ask me, he would be a guy that I think you would want to give Forbort maybe a couple games off between now and the end of the regular season. He's been found money for the Jets this year, but I do think that his game has dropped off a little bit, and I would look to maybe try and get him a little bit more recalibrated prior to the start of the playoffs, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely. Sorry, I was trying to get the website updated and do all this at the same time. But it's definitely a function.
Dave, you need an intern. It's come to that.
Let me tell you, have we had an intern here? I think we've had a few interns at Illegal Curve, but I think his name was Darren. But the point,
Jesse Pollock.
Oh yeah, it's Jesse Pollock.
Bar Down's own Jesse Pollock was an Illegal Curve intern back in the day.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think it's just a function of, look, I think Derek Forbort has been, to your point, Drew, I think he's been found money, but I think the wells is running a little bit dry with that. And I think that I think he's ideally suited to be your third pairing defenseman. I know that people like he and Pionk together, but I think you can put Ezzy with Pionk and he'd be probably a decent player. I'm kidding, of course.
But the problem with that, Dave, is that who is not going to be in the lineup that should maybe be in the lineup if Forbort's your third pairing defenseman.
Well, I'm not saying that necessarily right? I'm just saying maybe you throw in Ville Heinola into that second pair. Give him an opportunity to kind of thrive in that role. Maybe even Logan Stanley. We'll see. Who knows what that is? I think Drew has hit something. I think that for Paul Maurice, Dylan DeMello has become a bit of it's kind of like that. The pony that walks out with the thoroughbred out to the race, and before the race starts, sometimes horses have to have a pony that walks beside them, keeps them calm before the race. That's kind of what
Dave. You had a pony.
I did. Well, I didn't have a pony, but I had a thoroughbred once, and so I think that anytime I can make a racing analogy, I'll enjoy it. Which is Waggles was one. Avenging Bullet, Honor Play. The Maduke family's had a few ponies.
There you go. This is from Kentucky Derby is Decadent and Depraved, the Hunter S. Thompson famous magazine article. So there you go. There's some thoroughbred horse racing conversation.
Well, why didn't you tell us it was going to be show and tell? I would have brought my signed Teemu Selanne stick over here.
Yeah, your beard is show and tell enough, Ezzy.
If you want me to bring out the winner circles picture, I can maybe that would be good accompaniment for my thing. It'll just be all the winner circle pictures. And then Drew, I'm not so bourgeoisie as you. I'm more of an Assiniboine Downs kind of guy. I keep it local. So
yeah, shout out to Double D Darren Dunn.
I was gonna say I'm not a fancy man like you. I just keep it local and go to the Downs. Which, by the way, I will say, in normal times, I would advocate that people check out because it's a real nice way to spend an evening. I don't even gamble. I'm not a gambler, but I enjoy just going in the horse racing. Is a lot of fun. So,
well, it was it was sort of 9 years ago, 3 days ago. So 9 years and 3 days ago that we were at Keeneland in Lexington, Kentucky, for my wedding. And the Saturday, but we got married on a Sunday.
I want to clarify one thing. Andy's calling me Money Maduke. Andy, we own the hind end of the horse. It was a very, very small portion, but maybe the tail. So let's not get crazy here.
One of the hooves. You guys had one hoof.
On the Saturday before we got married on the Sunday, we went to the racetrack in Lexington. The whole, all of our wedding friends and wedding party,
and of course, sipping mint juleps.
I don't know if I was sipping mint juleps, but our buddy Neil got pooped on by a bird, and that's good luck. And then we immediately won the next race. So things worked out, and who knew that it would pay for the entire wedding.
Okay, just on that topic, because this is a famous story. A lot of our group of friends know this story, and we'll get back into the Jets talk here. But one thing that you failed to mention about that was it was one. I don't know what it's called, but we put in it was a group bet. Like, and you had to have the certain finish of the horses. I don't know if it's called an exactor, an extractor, or whatever it's called. But it was one of those group bets. So there was probably, I don't know how many of us, 30 there. There was a lot of people. Drew's a popular guy. But one thing you didn't mention is that our buddy Neil, who we call Rocky, wears glasses as you do, Drew. And it happened right after the race was over. And our buddy Adam Weitzman looked over. Neil had no idea that a bird had pooped on him, and it was all over his glasses, and it was raining. And it was just a really good time.
Raining, not poop, but I guess poop and
Yes.
a rain.
No. It wasn't raining poop. It wasn't raining men. It was actually raining.
All right, let's get back to talking about the Winnipeg Jets.
Because going somewhere.
Holy. This was a tangent, and then some. This segment of the show brought to you by Bernstein's Deli, official deli of Illegal Curve Hockey and home of the Illegal Curve Sandwich. Located in the Corden Village Mall, Bernstein's Deli has been Winnipeg's deli destination for over 30 years. For more information, find them on Facebook or at bernsteinsdeli.com. Whatever you need, however you need it, Bernstein's Deli is there to help you during these uncertain times. Get in touch with them, bernsteinsdeli.com. What did you think about Connor Hellebuck's comments yesterday after getting pulled on Thursday night? And we know that Hellebuck is not one who's ever going to criticize his own play. But to say that he didn't think he got pulled, I thought was maybe a bridge too far for me.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. And, we talked about it with Teddy Wyman during the first hour of the show, right? Like, Hellebuck says things that you don't expect, right? Like, he is not... He shoots from the heart, right? I think is what I would say. But yeah, I just find Hellebuck's comments a lot of the time funny, right? So again, I've already gone on the record. I think the Jets are going to win tonight's game. I don't think they want to lose 3 games in a row, but I think a lot of it's going to come down to how well Hellebuck plays after a stinky performance. And I know a few things about stinky, so I know the importance of good hygiene. But no, Hellebuck I think is going to have a lot to do with that. But I do think that the Jets are going to come out with a much better start, because we know that those 2 goals in 70 seconds were a big reason why the Jets lost that game.
You might know something about hygiene. It doesn't necessarily mean that he practices good hygiene.
I can spell hygiene.
Can you?
I can spell part of it.
Go for it.
Are you serious?
Oh, sure. Why not?
Hygiene.
Wrong. It's GEI.
That's what I said.
No, you didn't. You said GIE.
What is this, a spelling bee?
Dave, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, big shout out to our boy Gary Lawless in Vegas. He's currently listening to us while making everybody jealous of the 75 degrees. It's in Vegas, but he's tuning into the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. So big shout out to our friend Gary Lawless, formerly of the Winnipeg Free Press, TSN 1290, big longtime friend. My thoughts about what, Drew? Sorry, I lost my track of thought.
About Hellebuck's comments on Thursday night, or yesterday afternoon after his performance on Thursday night.
I would
hold on. I just checked. I spelled hygiene right.
Yeah. Quiet. No more talking from you.
I'm not sure what was worse, is the fact that Drew confused you, or if Drew actually believed
hygiene is spelled HYGIENE, and then Drew said it's spelled HYGEINE.
I got it wrong.
I was gonna say I think Drew's eating a little bit of what do they call it?
Crow.
You're eating some crow. So, anyways,
I've eaten that before. It's not that bad.
Yeah, you've also had horse. So, anyways, let's just cover everything today. Peta's really not going to be listening to us at this show. But, anyways, look, Connor Hellebuck has been like this. I mean, he wasn't like this in the AHL so much, probably because there was like all of one person covering him, and it would be myself and usually Mitch Peacock, the other media guy, and Russ Hobson. Shout out to Russ Hobson from Global News. He'd be there as well. But
Russ, sports guy.
But there was a different sort of element. You didn't have that sort of pressure on you. And I think once he got to the NHL, he just, not to say that he didn't have that confidence in the AHL, but it wasn't like that. If he didn't have a performance, it didn't feel like he's tried to sell you a bad performance was a good performance. And again, I just think that that's who Connor Hellebuck is. And that's just what, it's kind of his mantra. It's his philosophy. It's his thing. And again, like I said, you can disagree with it. I mean, again, I can't tell you how many times he has a stinky performance. People say to me, and it's not obviously guy wins a Vezina, doesn't have very many of those, but if he does, and he's human, so those are going to happen. And people will be like, what was he talking about? But I just think that's what he is. I think that's who he is. And I think the reality is the Jets love that about him, because it's that attitude that he displays. Again, the guy wins the Vezina trophy. He didn't do that by accident. And we all talked about this Jets team and what the defense looked like last year, and he still won the Vezina Trophy. So he's a pretty good goaltender. And I think that gives him a little bit of latitude to say the things that he does when he has performances that we as lay people would judge as less than ideal. And again, look, it's not to say that Connor Hellebuyck is infallible and can say whatever he wants. And you know, you have the sky is green and it's not. And you're like, okay, well, if he says it's green, I'm just saying when he's talking about his own personal performance, I don't have a problem with the way he visualizes things because it obviously works for him.
But Dave, can you spell infallible though? That's what Drew wants to know.
Do you remember that Jason Bateman movie when what was that, when he like as an adult somehow got onto the spelling bee? I don't know what was it called, but it was.
I think it was called Spellbound.
Was it? I don't think it was.
There's a
but
movie
anyways,
called Spellbound.
No, it was a very good one. But I think I know that spelling is competitive in the U.S. It's not something I'm super interested in though.
Scripts.
That's the spelling bee. Yes, that is correct.
Wow,
You're right about that. That one will give you full credit for.
Just stick to the scripts, Drew.
I believe the movie you're referencing, Dave, is called Bad Words.
Oh, Bad Words,
featuring Jason Bateman.
Yeah, big fan.
Which is also, ironically, the title of the Legal Curves book.
I going back to Hellebuyck's comments, I thought that, again, I don't expect him to really ever criticize himself. That's just clearly the psychological approach he has taken, and good for him. Who am I to criticize somebody else's psychological approach that they feel makes them the best athlete possible? But to me, I thought, here's the exact quote. It was a 3-2 game, and I don't think I should have been pulled. That's as far as I'll go on that. I don't know, something about that. Maybe the end of the line. That's as far as I'll go on that.
I don't think he's wrong. Hey,
you don't think he's wrong? You don't think that he was worth of being pulled there?
Well, no. Well, I only thought one of the goals was bad. If you want to break down the goals, I thought the Wayne Simmons goal was really the only bad goal. Like Austin Matthews' goal, we talked about this on the post-game show, Drew, but I know that you've watched the replays of the goals. But I mean, that was a nice shot, short side by Austin Matthews. We're talking about one of the best shooters in the entire game. So let's say that the Austin Matthews goal wasn't a quote unquote bad goal. Is the Jason Spezza goal that came on a delayed penalty? To me, that gets deflected a little bit, and we know all it takes is a little bit of a direction in the change of the puck. Don't get me wrong, I think Hellebuyck, that's a shot from the point. Regardless if it's tipped, you should probably stop that. But I think at most 2 of those were bad goals. So no goalie ever likes to get pulled, Drew, right? And I get that those comments are a little bit controversial, but I honestly think if Hellebuyck has a strong game tonight, and there's no reason to expect him to have anything but a strong performance, I don't think we're going to be talking about this, a day from now or 2 days from now. That's just my take. It's probably a bad take, but
no, I agree with you there. And exactly to your point, Connor Hellebuyck is, if he's not the best goalie in the game, he's certainly in the top 2 or the top 3 of the best goalies in the game. So I certainly don't expect there to be any lingering controversy, for lack of better word right now. I think he's going to be, to your point, Ezzy, I think he's going to be very good tonight because he usually bounces back very well, and the Jets certainly have not lost 3 games in a row all season long, which is what would happen tonight if they were to lose. Sort of feels like there's been this big gap, and there has been, so you forget that they're on this 2-game losing streak, which we'd all gone apoplectic about earlier this season. But just something about maybe I'll just leave it at, or that's as far as I'll go on that, left me with a little bit of a sour taste in his comments. And it's quite possible, Dave, that I'm reading far too much into it. Sometimes a goalie gets pulled not solely because of their performance. Sometimes it's a bit of a wake-up call to the team in front of them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's as much of what that was on Thursday night as it was his performance not being A+.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible, Drew. But again, like I said, I don't get overly worked up over the comments. I think they're. I mean, you could say maybe that was a shot across the bow, but Connor Hellebuyck isn't really like that. I just think he's just a guy who he doesn't want to get down into the weeds. He doesn't want to say something he's going to regret. And again, like I said, you get a guy even the day later, he's not happy about it. And I've said this before. I've walked, when back in the day when we'd go and do post game in the room, and I'd walk into the Jets room, and you'd see him right after game talking to Wade Flaherty, right? And so he breaks down his game. He's hypercritical, hypersensitive. You don't get to become a high performance athlete, which none of us are, but you don't get to become that by
we're low performance athletes.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
we're not even
athletes,
athletes.
actually, as we're just low performance.
Yeah.
Low performance humans.
Yeah. So I would just suggest though that again, like I said, I don't get overly worked up about things athletes say. Sometimes their comments are interesting. This is just Connor Hellebuck being Connor Hellebuck, and he just doesn't want to get down too far down into the weeds with this sort of dialogue. I think he just, like I said, wants to keep things the way he sees it, and doesn't really want to keep on rolling.
Fair comment, fair response there. Jets obviously played tonight against Toronto. They got the Oilers coming in, Monday, Wednesday. Then they go to Montreal for that one-off game, and then I believe, aside from one game more against the Leafs, that Friday, May 14th game, the rest of their schedule is against non-playoff teams. Are the next 4 games really sort of the what I'll describe as almost the end of the Jets' regular season, and where after that game against Montreal,
they've got 6 games after that.
You know what I meant. So now I'm
just feeling hot after correctly spelling hygiene, Drew.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I could write my dissertation right now.
How did your law school bar LSAT go?
Yeah, no, I didn't get into law school. That's right. Thank you for making me feel depressed, Drew, after getting a 147. But, it worked out pretty well.
This is forget it. I'm not even going to go there. I'll save it for a different show.
Yeah, it worked out for Dan Minuk. That's all that matters.
How important are the next 4 games there, Dave? The next, after tonight, and then there's sort of that stretch to end the season against non-playoff teams.
Look, this game is now taking on greater importance than it had before for me. I thought the set against Toronto, while important because it's a battle for first and whatever, I thought it had some significance, but I thought the Oilers games were much more significant. I thought that the way the Jets have played against the Oilers so far this season, including the way it started on this homestand, losing 3-0 to Edmonton in a rather listless game. I thought, how do you bounce back and play Edmonton now? You've lost 3 in a row to the Oilers, the 2 on that road trip out west, and then the one here. You really can't afford, because Edmonton's kind of had your number, I think. And again, like I said, I don't know that it would carry over, because you're going to play another 7 games in between the last Oilers game, or whatever it is, 5 games, 6 games between that last Oilers game and the end of the regular season. But I think psychologically it does help you a little bit if you can kind of get over that hump. You don't want to say, oh, well, we've lost 7 times to the Oilers, and once I think was an OT win or a shootout win, whatever it was. So I think the Oilers would be feeling pretty puffed up playing the Winnipeg Jets. And again, playoff hockey is a different animal, so it's not necessarily going to be representative of what happens in the regular season. But at the same time, you just kind of have to have that mentality. So I think it's very important. Again, it's interesting because, look, you don't have Adam Lowry, so you don't have your ideal forward lineup. You're still tweaking your defensive groups, so defensive pairings. So it's going to be interesting in the sense that, and Paul Maurice alluded to this fact, in the sense that he's not using these as measuring stick games. They're important. He says you can still learn from them and evaluate, but it's not essentially the, quote, full team. Again, not ideal, but I just think that you need to have, you have to come up with wins against all. Do you have to win the next 3? No, but I think you need to have performances that are indicative of a team that can go toe to toe with these teams. Even if you don't win, you want to see that 60-minute effort is there and that your team can compete. And that's all that really is important in these types of games.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Dave. I mean, yeah, the importance of the games in terms of making the playoffs or not. Obviously, if the Jets win tonight versus the Leafs, they still are in it for first place. If they don't get at least a point, I mean, it's virtually impossible, right? Like if you're 6 or 7 points behind the Leafs, guys, with 9 games left in the season, it's not going to happen. But yeah, you have to have better performances against the Oilers. Certainly, considering the way the Jets have played them, the way the Oilers have handled them. I mean, Connor McDavid. He's tearing up the entire league. So, don't expect to shut down McDavid necessarily on Monday night. But yeah, you got to show yourselves that you can beat this team, knowing that you're going to have to beat them 4 times to get to the second round of the playoffs. So I agree with you. But yeah, after that, Drew, and you start playing some of those non-playoff teams, like the games against Vancouver, yeah, those games are going to be basically meaningless.
Yeah, that's just it. So I think that you really sort of bear down for the next 4 games, and then that's when you get to maybe try and rest some guys. Paul Maurice might be, when they play those non-playoff teams, Ottawa, Calgary, a couple against Vancouver, and then is there another one against Ottawa, and then Toronto, of course, on that Friday, May 14th, to wrap the regular season ahead of what will be a very interesting playoffs, likely the Jets and the Oilers, of course, which makes Monday's game and Wednesday's game have a little bit more significance. Worth noting, the Oilers will will have had a big gap before Monday's game. I think they last played this past Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, against the Montreal Canadiens. And then they get this another sort of 5 days off before they play the Jets in town here on Monday. Let's pay some bills, run some ads. We're going to be joined by Mike McKenna, Golden Knights analyst, talk about the best team in the NHL by points. That is the Vegas Golden Knights. Much more to come. You're watching, you're listening, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve Sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. This segment of the show brought to you by Boston Pizza. Boston Pizza has the perfect starting lineup tonight with the BP Game Day meal deal. Choose two of your favorite medium gourmet pizzas, along with a triple order of Boston's famous wings, plus two dipping sauces, all for $54.99. It serves 5 to 6 people. Available for takeout and delivery only at bostonpizza.com or download the MyBP app. We're pleased to welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Vegas Golden Knights analyst Mike McKenna. Mike, good morning. Nice to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm great. You know what's awesome about this is I can actually see your faces.
Yeah.
Like listen, I'm on several alumni committees and there's these different like councils, and we used to do these things by conference call all the time. And I couldn't stand conference calls because you know why everybody does this? They put it on mute and then it becomes your turn to talk and you forget. And like, you do this face to face. How much better is everything? So it's very nice to see everybody. Thanks for having me.
And Mike, I wasn't lying, right? Like when we were back on the radio days, I would always text you that we're three, really handsome guys. So now it's confirmed, right?
Oh, Ezra, you are beautiful. Like I didn't realize just the level of maintain and upkeep you have on.
Yeah, like I've gotten Brad Pitt, I've got Richard Gere. Like it's I
don't see. Really... I mean, very George Clooney-esque. Dave, yeah, you can take a hike with that Cubs hat. Other than that, I mean, we're all good here. So, and Drew, that's a football. Okay. And look, we got curling too. So this is so much fun.
Exactly. Mike, we appreciate you joining us. And that's a hell of a way to start the interview. That's for sure. The Vegas Golden Knights, the top team in the NHL based on points earned, 68 points in 46 games played. They've won 8 in a row. I mean, what obviously everything's going right for this Vegas Golden Knights team right now. But, if you had to pinpoint one catalyst, what would it be?
Well, let's talk in recent terms more than anything, because you're on an 8-game streak, and in the last 5-6 games, you've seen the big dogs come through. Stone is on a point streak, multi-game point streak. Pacioretty, Theodore, they've played really good hockey. But what led to that at the start of the streak, and even when they were struggling a little bit, it was the depth scoring was really coming through. You had players like Tomasz Nosek, who was on a heater. Nick Waz started scoring. His first half of the year, nothing went right. Now he's finding the net. It's going. So the depth has really played in. Of course, they've had great goaltending all season long, and that's a strength of theirs, is that this condensed schedule, they can trot out a fresh goaltender for every game. And you've got Robin Lehner, who's always at the top of the statistics in the league. Marc-Andre Fleury has had a resurgent year and been so good, both of them combined. So, you kind of factor it all in right now, and Vegas is playing their best, deepest hockey throughout the lineup. And they've also had a little bit lighter schedule recently. This win streaks happened against LA and Anaheim and Arizona, teams that can push them at times, but they're not quite Minnesota and Colorado. So that's the big test coming up.
Mike, we want to get back to the goaltending, because I think nobody's going to disagree that, the Golden Knights have arguably the best goaltending depth in the league. And I agree, Marc-Andre Fleury is, I think you'd agree, most likely going to the Hall of Fame, and he's having a fantastic season. I have to ask you about Chandler Stevenson, because I remember when, that trade happened, for a 5th round pick, turns that into a 4-year contract. He's centering the top line with Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty. And, the criticism of the Golden Knights has been that, maybe the center depth isn't as good as some other teams, maybe like a Colorado or Winnipeg, for example. But just how good of a story is Chandler Stevenson, because, he's having just another fantastic year for the Golden Knights, and they got him for a 5th round pick, and he just, continues to excel on that top line.
Yeah, it's a great observation. Stevenson is the catalyst for the top line between Stone and Pacioretty. And at the start of training camp, that was not a done deal. There were still question marks. Hey, does Cody Glass fit in, who went, I believe, 7th overall in the draft a couple of years ago? Well, Cody didn't grab it in camp. And then when Stevenson got hurt, Cody Glass goes back between the two of them, and the chemistry just wasn't there with Stone and Pacioretty flanking. And then Stevenson goes back in, and it's just bang, things start to click again. And it's because he's so fast. And guys, there's one thing in hockey, and especially in today's game, that will always give you an opportunity, and it's speed. You can't teach it. You can try to improve it. But man, that's just a given ability. And Stevenson is so good with it. And what it does is that it doesn't even matter if he has the puck. And this is why his point totals don't necessarily mimic Stone and Pacioretty, but he's the first guy in on the forecheck. He's the guy who blows the zone. He's the guy that pushes the D back. And what that does is give Mark Stone all the space and the time in the world to make plays. And he's so intelligent. His hockey IQ's through the roof. Stone, I'm speaking of, that it gets a chance to give it to Pacioretty, get the puck on his blade. They work together so well. And, Stevenson is just the engine to that line. But it's carried for him, right? His confidence comes with it. Now he's starting to play some power play. He's doing things that he did in junior hockey in the Western League when he put a lot of points up, and the things that he did in the American Hockey League when he put points up. Now he's got the opportunity, because in Washington, they were so deep at center, he really didn't get the chance to grab a top-line role like he has in Vegas.
Mike McKenna is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms talking about the Golden Knights. They're atop of the NHL in terms of points earned this year. They've won 8 games in a row.
Mike, I forgot you're a St. Louis guy, and so wearing the Cubs hat would be an insult to you. Usually I try to be a little cognizant of that. The best I could do is...
Man, I didn't wear a Cardinals hat.
I have a Pirates hat beside me. I've got
the Buccos.
Yeah, I've got lots of hats, but I just happened to throw this one on, match my shirt, and then I realized it might be a bit insulting to you.
Oh, no, it's a friendly rivalry, man. Yes. Like, for real. I know I've got friends that take it like militant. Trust me, if they see a Cubs hat, they're like, Cubs side, and that's not me. It's a friendly rival. I've been to Wrigley. I appreciate it all. So I just wanted to give you a fun ribbing, man. I love it.
The truth is, I'm actually a Jays fan. I just like hats, so I got lots of different ones.
Awesome.
In the repertoire. One thing I want, speaking of being a fan, what's it like having fans back in the building in Vegas? Because here in Canada, like, I'm at the hockey games in the arena, and I got to tell you, sometimes it's I don't want to use the word surreal, but it's so unusual to be in this, 10,000 plus 20,000 for you guys plus building, and there's no fans there. And it just the element, and you're a former player, so you know what it's like to have to try and get your energy level up. What's it like now having fans come back? I know it's in a different capacity, but what's it like having them back in the building?
I don't think people ever realized how loud and how much of a difference 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 fans can make. In Vegas, they've been putting in 3,950 fans for the past several weeks, and they're loud. Like, you don't even have to pump the crowd noise in anymore. And it's such a departure from what like the bubble was like, where, like you said, it was surreal. And some teams were able to get around that. Others weren't. Like, you look at St. Louis went to the bubble last year. It was like they didn't want to be there. They couldn't find that inspiration or that energy, whereas other clubs fed off of it, and they somehow found a way internally to make it happen. But Vegas still feels a home ice advantage at home. It's a big reason why they want to make sure they finish, if not at the top of the division in the Honda West, at least second at the bare minimum. They want to have home ice advantage as long as they can, because their fans make a difference and they feed off of it. Like, when that place gets going, it can, especially from a goalie's perspective, you get 1 or 2 goals against and a building gets loud and you start spiraling mentally, because like you can't hear yourself think. A puck gets dumped around the boards. You go out to play it. You can't hear your defenseman. Like, these are things that all happen. And that happened to me in the Boston Garden once. I remember I got scored on, puck gets dumped in. I go to play it and I couldn't hear anything. So I just like rimmed it around the glass and it's coming right back down my throat, and that's like, those are real things. And even with 4,000 people, you can feel it. And it's not just, this is not lip service. Like, players say it all the time. Oh, we got the greatest fans in the world. Every city says that. And you know what? I think the players actually, in a lot of cases, believe that because they have a connection to their fan base. That's where it comes from. There's no real metric for the best fans out there. But in Vegas, man, if you've ever been in that building, it's just different. Like, the city is crazy for hockey, and not just hockey, for the Golden Knights. Like, there's a very special connection in Vegas to that team on a very visceral level. And the things that happen leading up to the first game of the entire franchise are the basis and the root of all of that. Worst tragedy ever in that city, and a lot, it's hard to put words to it, and how people rallied and galvanized around it. And it all plays into it, right? Like, there's a bigger sense of community in Vegas to what that team means in a lot of cities.
Mike McKenna, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Mike is the Vegas Golden Knights studio analyst. Golden Knights winners of 8 games in a row, playing some great hockey as of late. Mike, if you go back 1 month, you go back to March 24th through today, Marc-Andre Fleury has played 9 games. Robin Lehner has played 7 games. Lehner has the better save percentage and the better goals against average. Game 1 of the playoffs, who gets the start? And if it's Lehner, does Alan Walsh handle it better than he did last year?
Well, listen, I really don't know what direction it's going to go, because hypotheticals are tough, man. Like, Drew, you're tossing me a hard one here, because we're trying to like put the Swami hat on and go for it, right? But I honest to God don't know who would start the first game, because to me, they've been equal. And like, I really think about this, that either goaltender for the Golden Knights could win them to a Stanley Cup. Truly believe that. I wonder if it's not a rotation in playoffs. And I don't mean like a straight up 1-to-1, but I mean like if somebody goes for a couple games and they're feeling it, they run them. And then if it goes off, they go to the next guy. Like, the mindset of the goaltenders playing there, of Fleury, of Lehner, they're winning. They're having fun. They're part of something bigger that knows they have a chance. Like, you have the ultimate teammates and mindset with that. And selfishly, man, you want to be on the ice for everything, right? Like, it's your net. You never want to lose your net. But you also, in this type of really unique scenario, and especially as condensed as this season is, you realize what's going on. And you realize why this team's been successful. It's because both guys are feeding off one another. They're pushing each other for sure. Like, there's competition there. Like, you can't tell me that Robin Lehner doesn't want to outplay Marc-Andre Fleury and play every game, and vice versa, right? But that's healthy. That's good. That's what professional athletes that really strive for success want. So I honestly don't know who would play the first game, but I truly think that as the playoffs go along, you're probably going to see both guys for the Vegas Golden Knights at some point. It's just what mixture, that's what we don't know.
Mike, I wanted to ask you about, the pressure that's on this Golden Knights team, because I think you would agree that, any team that is in the playoffs or trying to get into the playoffs, there's pressure varying degrees, right? But, we talk about it oftentimes here in Winnipeg, like a couple of years ago, St. Louis, your hometown beat, the Blues beat the Jets in the first round. Then last year, they don't even get it out of the qualification round. And I think there's some parallels between the Jets and the Golden Knights, going to the West final, obviously beating the Jets, getting to the Stanley Cup final, but ultimately not winning the Stanley Cup. But the moves that the Golden Knights have made over the years, and most recently, bringing in Alex Pietrangelo and signing him to that big contract, like, is it? I mean, this might be, goes without saying, but is it basically Stanley Cup or bust for the Golden Knights, or at the very least getting to the Stanley Cup final? Because to me, it seems like, getting to the second round or third round just isn't going to cut it when you have such a talented group.
Well, I think anything less than the cup's a failure, and that's the way they're looking at it, right? And for myself, I think the metric is always if you've played your best, you can hang your hat on that. But you're exactly right. When you have a team this deep, you also are very cognizant of the fact that how many years of chances do you have at this? At some point, that will go away. You can't have a dynasty for 10 years. Nobody has. It just doesn't happen. So you do have a window. And I think the players in the team are very aware that, hey, like, we've got a couple of years here for sure with our core group. We got to make this happen. And it comes from the top on down. I mean, Bill Foley is very outspoken, and he's said very clearly, like, it's time to win Stanley Cups. We're in year 4. We've taken big swings. We have a lineup that we know can do it, that we've iced, that's ready to take that next step. Hard part is there's 31 teams in the league. And anybody who's played knows just how difficult it is to win and all the extraneous circumstances that can sewer a team. 2 players get hurt, maybe it's over. You know what I mean? Any fantasy hockey owner can tell you the same thing, guys. I can tell you what, I got invited to a fantasy hockey league for the first time in my life as a post-playing career, and I've realized now why people live and die by this stuff, right? Like, I mean, we had one night where we had 3 players go out of the lineup, and I'm like, we're done, it's over, and but it kind of makes you think, like, with a GM hat, and as a player, you don't do that very often. Like, you're just going and you're playing the game and you think your team's invincible. You can win no matter what. It doesn't matter if we lose 5 guys. We can win no matter what. That's our culture. That's our identity. But it does matter. And I think you're spot on, Ezra, that it's for the Golden Knights with that lineup and the way they've played. Like, they've backed it up on the ice. This isn't just a matter of having a good lineup. They've backed it up. They've beaten good teams. It's win or bust. They have to. In their eyes, that's what needs to happen.
Mike McKenna, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms talking about the Golden Knights. That's the franchise. That's the team that Mike is a studio analyst for.
Well, we're also going to ask Mike about the Silver Knights, because if you go about 20 minutes southeast of Vegas, you have the Silver Knights. And one of the benefits we see here, Mike, in Winnipeg is that you have the Winnipeg Jets, you have the Manitoba Moose. You can watch both teams. I mean, generally they play out of the same building. Not this season. They've moved the Moose up to the Iceplex. But you're fairly close and you get a chance to watch them. What benefit has the organization seen moving from Chicago, moving their prospects over to Henderson and playing with them with the Silver Knights?
Well, there's the obvious side of things. And also, like, I've been lucky enough this year, I'm doing color commentary on those games. We do 10 of them on TV a year. And man, like, hey, I love being an analyst, but color commentary is really like the goal. Like, yeah, especially like my personality. I'm like, oh man, I'm so excited to talk on air about hockey, like in a fast manner and in the moment. And, but getting to see those games firsthand it's great to see the prospects who are ready to go. And the front office gets that same perspective. They can see them in person. They're not relying on video. They're in-house. They can control their training, their diet, all those type of things. The biggest benefit, I would argue, is that the way the Golden Knights are able to manage salary cap with moving players all around, not having to send them on planes to Chicago and back. And like, it's a lot of paper transactions, and it affords you the availability to run your team right against the cap while not taking up roster space, and obviously things are different in COVID world. You're not traveling as much. So you don't need to carry extra players like you used to in the past, but you see this in Winnipeg, right? They can do the same thing, that you can manage things easier having that in-house. So I think that's a big aspect. I think of Nick Waugh last year. I mean, this guy, I don't know how many. I think I have a lot of air miles. I'm telling you, this guy on I'm telling you, if he was flying like Southwest, this guy's never like sitting. He's getting on A1 for every flight the rest of his life after last season. And so that's a real benefit. It's also your players aren't being shuttled around. They can sleep in their own bed. They can rent one place. Like from the player's perspective, that's unbelievable. And I know like in Winnipeg, that's a big draw for players with the Moose, that if you sign with us, you're in this city, you can be here. You live in one place. And especially for older players, like if you're a veteran who's maybe a swing guy and you're going to be called up a bit, you got a family, you factor those things into account. So it really works, not just from the player side, but from the management side. It's kind of symbiotic in that way.
Mike, last question for you. You look at those West Division standings, and the Golden Knights are 2 points up on the Avs. The Avs have the 2 games in hand. Minnesota seems, I'm going to say Minnesota's going to finish third there. How important is it between the Golden Knights and the Avs to avoid the Wild, a very impressive Wild team, in that first round, and instead get, my words, not yours, the bye against the fourth place team, be it the Coyotes or the Blues, or I suppose the Sharks and the Kings have an outside shot still?
Yeah, that's your words. I'm not hanging my hat on a bye in the first round.
My word.
Remember the Blue Jackets and Lightning?
Yeah.
2 years ago, right? Nobody gave them a chance, but it is real because Minnesota's pushed Vegas harder than anybody in the division, even harder than Colorado. Minnesota has the winning record against the Golden Knights. And, the Golden Knights aren't fearful of anybody, but you're aware of the task at hand. You know teams that you match up well against. And Minnesota's gotten really good goaltending in some of the games from Talbot. Kakinen's had a nice game or two as well. But it's really the forecheck. Like, they bring it hard to Vegas. They get on their D. They stifle the breakout. So much of what Vegas does is from the D zone out. It's that first pass. It's that quick movement. It's D in transition. And so they've given them fits. I mean, if I'm the Golden Knights, I would much rather play number 4 than potentially play Minnesota for those reasons. I'd let Colorado take care of that, let them battle it out, hope it goes 7 games and move yourself on. But it's going to be tough no matter what, because like Colorado's a wagon. Minnesota's way better than people thought, and they are good. They are real. That's not a mirage. And then beyond that, man, who knows? Like, I do see the number 4 slot as being a lot different, but who can guarantee anything in this world? We know that firsthand. We've seen it play out before, right?
Yeah.
Mike, sorry, I know Drew said that was going to be the last question, but I was wondering if you could just give us a quick review of Bring It On.
Oh, so here's the deal. Obviously, Ezra.
By the way, Drew has no idea what I'm talking
following
about.
Me.
Like the cheerleader movie.
So yeah, well, I'm sitting here, in the living room last night, and Mrs.
I may
McKenna
have seen it twice in theaters. Just throwing that out there.
I saw it once in a theater. I'm 38 years old, and I believe it came out in maybe 2000 or 2001, and I will regretfully say that I went along to see it. Because I was dating somebody that seemed to enjoy that type of thing and just trying to, be good. And it was a long play. We'll say that. But that turned out to be a very wrong, long play, a very, very wrong, long play with that person. But I saw Bring It On back then. And then last night, Mrs. McKenna tosses it on out of nowhere. And I'm looking up and I'm just going, it's giving me bad memories. And then the funny part is, like, you look back at these movies of your youth, and teenage years for me, and you laugh at it because you start to see like the style and the music, and no matter how awful that movie may be in my eyes, there's a lot of nostalgia to it. So like from the movie factor, it's still a solid 1 out of 10, but the nostalgia factor is probably more like a 7.5 or 8 out of 10. You know what I mean? So like, I think perspective changes things, and it's kind of, as much as I complained about it, like, part of me had this moment where I was like, man, this is actually kind of cool. I miss those days with the baggy pants and the midriff showing and, spiky hair.
Yeah, Mike, I know that, Mike was watching that last night because I follow Mike on Instagram. I can't believe Drew's not following Mike on Instagram, by the way. Let's get serious here, Drew.
Ezzy, there were some toros in the atmosphere last night, and it might have been a little bit, too cold, and I couldn't do it as a result. But I'll get right on that right afterwards there.
I just can't believe they let the veterans pick the team, the cheerleading team. Like, they've got, like, it's high school. Like, they don't have coaches,
And then they hired this guy who was peddling the same routine up and down the California coast. It was a real scandal.
Take it easy, Drew.
Plot holes just don't matter, do they?
No.
But yeah,
No.
memory lane, man.
Mike, at least you went and saw the movie with someone of the opposite sex. I saw it with a group of guys, and there was nary a female around us when we went to see it, let me tell you. But that might speak more about me as a 19 or an 18-year-old than it does about anything
I think
else.
at that point, Drew also wanted to be a cheerleader, so I think that factored in as well. But
I have friends that had cheerleading scholarships, male friends, female friends.
Hey,
there's nothing. That is a demanding sport.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm just Mike, I'm really just jealous. That's the only thing that I was good at was, eating nachos and drinking beer. So I'm just,
I just got a text from my dad. He says that Bring It On is one of his favorites. So I think on that note, it's probably not worth asking any follow-up questions of my father as to why he was watching a teenager cheerleader movie, but let's just leave it right there.
Drew, or the show. I mean, that's another reason. So you might want to ask him about that as well.
Mike McKenna is a Golden Knights studio analyst. He also does analysis on the Henderson Silver Knights broadcasts. Mike, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for joining us.
Happy to, guys. Lots of fun.
Mike.
Thanks for having me.
That was a lot of fun.
Thanks,
Take
Mike.
care, Mike. There he goes. Mike McKenna joining us on the program. But this has been a doozy.
I threw you off there, Drew. I knew you had no idea what I was talking about.
At least you threw it to a movie, Ezzy, that I have a lot of experience having watched on more than one occasion, at least.
What would a group of 18-year-old guys were there any girls at that movie? Not that there's anything wrong
I
with
think
that.
there weren't any girls with us at the movie. There were other girls at the movie, but
maybe you guys were geniuses. Maybe you thought, well, they'll go to where there's going to be a lot of women.
It is a classic film, like the rivalries between the two schools, and Kirsten Dunst. It's a nice little bit of acting she does in that movie.
It was a fantastic film. There's no question about that. But it was. I really did not expect to have a conversation about it during today's show. But that's what Mike brings, and Ezzy, you obviously do your research, creeping on our guests' Instagrams ahead of the show.
Anytime one of our guests is post something on Instagram about a early 2000s movie they watch, I make sure that I bring it up.
There you go. That's an admirable goal. Let's wrap it up. We got the post-game show to come later on tonight after the Jets and the Leafs. Reminder, the Illegal Curve post-game show back here on our YouTube channel, so you can get ready for that when the final buzzer goes right around probably 8:35, give or take a few minutes at that point in time. Final thoughts ahead of tonight's Jets-Leafs game. We know that if the Jets win, Ezzy loses his beard. So that's really...
and gets a haircut.
Yes, I assume that the players will have extra motivation knowing that.
Yeah, I've already texted most of the boys, so they're aware. But no, I already said it. I mean, I'm guaranteeing a Jets win tonight, boys. I think Hellebuck has something to prove. He wasn't happy with the way he played 3 goals on 6 shots, and obviously, Dave, they're going to get a injection of energy from Jansen Harkins. Logan Stanley's back in the lineup. I think it's going to be a chippy game. I don't know if there's going to be a fight. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a fight. But I think this game has some meaning, not necessarily so much in terms of points, but I don't think. Look at the Leafs have beat the Jets 6 times in a row in Winnipeg. Like, I think the Jets are tired of losing to the Leafs in their home building. So I think this is probably going to be a lower scoring game, Dave. But with these two offenses, I wouldn't bet on it. But it should be a good one tonight.
Dave, you get the final word.
Well, first of all, my first final word is going to be why do we not have enough likes on the chat, guys? Come on, there's a lot of you in the chat still, so we want to. Or you go and get your afternoon started. It's going to be not the nicest day here in Winnipeg, but the sun is going to be shining. It's going to be blue skies. So get out there, get some fresh air before you join us back for the post-game show. But before you leave, drop those likes. Make sure you come to illegalcurve.com. We have all the pre-game media availability that will be up there from the players, from Coach Paul Maurice. We'll have the lines. We'll have the D pairs. We have all the news about Ville Heinola, who's been reassigned. We'll have the Moose game covered. That gets going at 1:00. Could be, I think, the first time ever if Declan Chisholm, who was day-to-day, didn't play the last game, he plays, it would be every defenseman playing will be a Jets draft pick. So that'll be interesting. Eric Comrie going for his franchise. He'll have the franchise lead, surpassing Corey Schneider. With 85 wins if he gets the win over Stockton, and the Moose are flying 4 wins in a row. So it'll be an interesting game there. Cole Perfetti, he's got a 4-game point streak. He's been playing real well. So lots to look forward to throughout the course of the day. Like I said, Moose starting at 1:00, then the Jets at 6, and then back here with us. So lots to come. Make sure you go to illegalcurve.com, smash that like button, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining us.
Exactly. A very busy day. Want to say thank you to Ted Wyman. Thank you to David Alter, and thank you to Mike McKenna for joining us on this morning's program. Want to thank our sponsors, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Bernstein's Deli, Zappia Group Realty, and Boston Pizza. Support these fine local businesses because they support illegal curve hockey. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. We remind you the post-game show tonight, right around 8:30, give or take a few minutes, to talk about what happens between the Jets and the Leafs. But until then, we remind you, if it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.